that ever hit the road. When it comes to class and styling, it's the mother love.
Why do we drive a car that looks like this? Not because it's common transportation, it's because we're on a trip.
We want the Bricklin.
When we punch the button and the door jumps up, we are definitely different. And we are acknowledged. We are envied.
We want the Bricklin.
It was Canada's car. So sexy, so audacious that it became the vehicle for the dreams of almost everyone it touched. Dreams promoted with consummate skill by the P.T. Barnum of the automobile world, Malcolm Bricklin.
Who's the man with the guts? Who's the man who's gonna build it?
I got letters from kids, from guys who owned the Bricklin, and they would write me, "Dear Mr. Bricklin, thank you so much for inventing this car. I never got laid before I had one." It was a big deal to a lot of people.
And it also catches the eye of one of Canada's most respected premiers. To Richard Hatfield, the car is a way to return New Brunswick to its glory days. Together, the premier and the promoter set out to build the Bricklin.
This whole concept would have appealed to Richard Hatfield as a way of putting New Brunswick on the map. And he knew that New Brunswick hungered for that.
In just 2 short turbocharged years, the dream crashes and burns. In the end, the Bricklin destroys lives, creates financial ruin, and becomes known scathingly as New Brunswick's car.
What an amazing team, folks. The Arizona Cowboy and the classy Canuck. Now tell the people here tonight, will you? Because I know they're wondering what brought the two of you together.
Creating a car is a conjuring act. Creating it independently a virtual mission impossible. Yet Malcolm Bricklin is one of the rare few with the confidence and flamboyance to attempt to defy history.
Malcolm Bricklin was a showman. Malcolm Bricklin was what Hollywood used to be. There's a lot of people in Detroit which are boring as hell. I gotta admit one thing, Malcolm was not boring.
When he was born, he has a double crown, and the doctor told me I have a genius here. I named him after my grandfather, who lived to be 93 years old. Cars really wasn't his forte. He liked business. He used to say, "I'll be a millionaire at 25." And it really came about.
Growing up in Philadelphia, then in Orlando, Florida, Malcolm learns the Bricklin credo. Whatever he does in life, the family comes first. And he grows up where everyone believes from the beginning that he's destined for great things.
He felt that his father could teach him more about business than the professors. And he was business-oriented. I objected, but rather than let him go 2 years and wasting his time there, he immediately got involved in business. And so, fortunately, as we can see, it came out all right.
In 1958, Bricklin drops out of college to start Handyman, a chain of late-night hardware stores. His plan is simple: take the late-night gimmick and franchise. And he hires his family to help him run the business. Bricklin's first big sale is to William Quayle Walker. Walker invests $300,000 in the Handyman chain and mortgages his family paint business to do it. It turns out to be a disastrous investment. In late 1964, franchise holders sue Bricklin for $2 million. Although the court finds against him, Handyman declares bankruptcy before the judgments can be paid. Despite this, Bricklin claims he sold Handyman to William Quayle Walker and his company, Dixie Paint and Varnish, for $1 million.
they offered me a amount of money that would give me $1 million after taxes. And since that's what I said I wanted, which is what I thought I wanted, I sold out.
Dixie Paint and Varnish Company never bought Handyman for any price, certainly not $1 million. And when Malcolm Bricklin disappeared one day from the Handyman stores, Dad was left with a debt of approximately $300,000 that he had to pay off. It was really a bad deal for my mother and father. Malcolm Bricklin disappeared with the money and Dad was left holding the bag.
When Malcolm returns to Philadelphia, he becomes a consultant and quickly finds himself with a contract to help launch a new video jukebox for David Rosen. The video jukebox failed, but Malcolm had made contact with the Italian parrot company named Inisetti. They also made scooters, and as it turned out, they had a problem selling hundreds of scooters in the United States. Malcolm makes a deal to sell the scooters named Lambrettas, and at the same time acquires a Rolls-Royce with his office expense money. Malcolm sold the scooters in large lots to police forces along the eastern seaboard. This success had a problem. The scooters were sold out, and Inisetti was not going to export anymore. Another scooter company was having problems as well. They were called Rabbits by a Japanese company.
When Malcolm Bricklin once again surfaces, it's in a place no one expects, Tokyo. It's late in 1967 and Bricklin's here because he realizes before virtually anyone else the massive potential for cheap Japanese cars in the United States. He's come to Tokyo to sell his vision to a little-known car company called Subaru. For the last year, Bricklin's been selling Subaru scooters in the United States. Now he wants one of their cars, the Subaru 360.
I saw a car there that looked like a small Volkswagen that they said I could buy for $600, FOB Yokohama. I said I'd be very interested in bringing that car in the United States. And they, being polite, said, well, that's fine, but in 1968, this was now 1967, there's new federal laws that come into play, and if you give us $1.5 million so we can meet those laws, we'll give you the car.
Unwilling to take no for an answer, Bricklin heads straight to the source of those laws, Washington, D.C. Sitting in the offices of the National Highway Administration, reading the new regulations for cars, he discovers a loophole that will change his life and bring Subaru to the United States.
The first page said, these laws apply to all vehicles over 1,000 pounds curb weight. And I open up the brochure, and the brochure says 960 pounds.
From the land of the rising sun come the wonder cars. The Subaru 360 mini sedan spells out economy in a car that's fun to own and fun to drive. The little Subaru goes anywhere and parks anywhere. Interior appointments are attractive and standard. Rear windows that open, standard. Storage space, standard. Reclining front seats, standard. We call it cheap and ugly, but 66 miles per gallon sounds pretty good to anybody interested in economy. And the lowest price tag in the industry doesn't hurt either. Two ingredients that make cheap and ugly beautiful. And all kinds of people are driving Subarus for all kinds of reasons. including some very groovy chicks. So, what else is new? A little something to make you feel shiftless. The 360 Auto Drive. No clutch, just touch. So what else is new? Take a look at this baby. 360 conformation, sports car styling. The Subaru 360 Super Sport. Knocked out interior with bucket seats, leather steering wheel cover, and tachometer. Concave racing roof with racing stripe. Now, watch her go. Young where it counts, the Subaru Sport is a grabber. It delivers 360 economy and Grand Prix excitement.
The introduction of the Subaru 360 in the United States is a runaway success. Banks leap to provide Bricklin with money and sales mount. Flush with cash, he builds a lavish office and splashes out on a private plane, a yacht, and a helicopter. But in early 1969, disaster strikes. The Subaru 360 is branded a death trap.
The front cover was a cover of the Subaru 360 that sold for $12.98 retail. The smallest car and the cheapest car in the United States. And next to it was the Cadillac. And it had a bumper to bumper. And based on that, they said it was the unsafest car in the world. And you're right. The smallest car is the unsafest car. Not even a question about it. And when somebody brought me the report, I said, well, what's the circulation? They said 500,000. So I said, so 500,000 people don't buy it. Who cares? Wrong.
But it wasn't just size. Everything from a weak body to a small engine makes the car dangerous, and sales plummet. The banks cut off the money, and within a year, Malcolm Bricklin is out of business again.
Malcolm ended up with a bunch of funny little cars and he didn't know what to do with them. Well, the first thing he wanted to do was he wanted to make what they call fast-track race cars. And he had conceptions of putting the motors and the chassis in a little frame and then going around a track in California and selling it, renting it. That was what he was going to do. Well, that kind of got waylaid a little bit.
I think an automobile is two things. It's engineering and it's art. First thing you do is you're attracted to it by its aesthetics. You come into the showroom, let's say, you sit down in it, you touch it, you feel it, until you turn that key, it's all art. You've been attracted to it by its aesthetics, at which point you turn the key and now you start the engineering.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
I got to introduce you to a guy you're going to love to meet, Bruce Meyers from the Meyers Manx. And Bruce is one of the best human beings, one of the nicest human beings you want to meet in your lifetime.
Then I got a guy by the name of Bruce Meyers. Bruce was a poolman in Southern California that also was a car freak to the nth degree. He created the Baja 1,000-mile race, which all the celebrities in the world used to go racing, and he invented the dune buggy. The Meyers Manx dune buggy was the first dune buggy ever invented. So it was extremely creative hippie. He was an automotive hippie. in Southern California, well known at the time, and I hired him to take what I said I wanted to look like and for him to give me my first prototype.
All right. So now I get together with Bruce. And of course, I love him because I had bought it at Meyers Manx. My kids and I used to drive around in Philadelphia all over the neighborhood and pick up the other kids and go drive in the dune buggy. So I tell him what I want to do, and I need a prototype.
This is the 1964 Meyers Manx, the world's first fiberglass dune buggy, Old Red. This car matters because of what happened after I did this. Of course, at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. 50 years? Oh my God. You can't imagine what'll take place. The name came from the fact that it has its tail up in the air. It's kind of back there like a Manx cat. And I remember driving it out on the street the first time. I stopped at a signal. Everybody at the four parts of that big intersection were staring at this little red car, wondering they'd never seen one. That's what the car did. It made everybody start to look at it. If you want to attract attention, get one of those things. The ergonomics were wrapped around the Volkswagen basics. The seat, the steering wheel, the column, all that are exactly like a stock Volkswagen. Old Red is the very first fiberglass dune buggy. I'm called the inventor of the dune buggy. I'm not. I'm really the inventor of the fiberglass dune buggy. Because I had been a fiberglass boat builder for several years, I was very, very expert. And it doesn't have the kinds of mistakes that people make with fiberglass. Millions of sailboats are sitting out in the weather. They're just finished in gel coat, which came out of the mold. Well, I just brought the gel coat to the kit car world. The buildup of the gel coat gives you a lot of protection because when you scratch it up, you can always wet sand it and polish it out. If it's a real Meyers Manx, you can park your butt on that fender anytime. The other thing about the fender, it has to be flat on the top to sit a beer on. Or, pardon me, a Coke. I'm a longtime art student, and a sense of style and shape and form and all that is a big deal with me. As a little boy, I loved the funnies on Sundays because they were in 4 colors, and Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, they all drove these funny little cars with great big fat wheels on them. So the art training, the childhood memories, and my experience in fiberglass led to the creation of the fiberglass dune buggy. In the business of going off-road, you don't need, for instance, sides. All I'm going to do is scratch them all up, so I just pulled them off. It's like an old woman and her skirts, or walking through a puddle. You hold the skirts up to walk through a puddle. Well, get rid of them. The first dune buggies were called water pumpers because they were made out of old Fords and Chevys and Plymouths. And all they did was bolt the engine, tranny, and the rear axle all in one lump. And some guy sitting in a little monkey seat driving the whole thing. And I watch these other dune buggies and I see what they need to be. They need to be short. They need to be light. You have to have a floor at some 8 or 10 inches off the ground. I put the wheels with the front axle of a Volkswagen, hooking them together, and I had the transmission of the Volkswagen and the engine, and they were sitting up on blocks, and I placed them where I thought they should be. Well, you're going to drive off-road. Well, you need to see the road right in front of you, so you can't have a big hood up in front of you. So it's a little wonder car that way. The layout gives you all that. Dune buggies are not very pretty, but this one I decided I don't want to be an unpretty dune buggy anymore. A woman's hip is very important. That comes into play a lot. Sounds kind of sexy, doesn't it? But it's pretty important. It drives us. One car designer called that thing a car with a bikini. I love it. It's so simple. I had an article from Car and Driver magazine written by Steve Smith, a dear friend, and he just set the world on fire with his car and his way of the use of words and his romancing everybody. Well, we suddenly had 350 orders or more. And when one set of molds, you got a 1.5 years work. Old Red is 50 years old. It doesn't seem like it. It's sort of a reflection of my lifestyle, which was all about being free, which is the very characteristic of the Meyers Manx and my life.
Here's the first Meyers Manx, 1964 Meyers Manx body.
To see my car at such a place as the fanciest kind of car shows with the most wonderful Duesenbergs and Rolls Royces and underslungs and all that stuff. Oh my goodness, what have I done? And when they reach out of the stands and yell and wave and clap their hands, I'm just overwhelmed. I feel so lucky to be where I am. And that crazy thing that I did was so well taken by the world, not just the guys around the corner, but the whole world. I'm Bruce Meyers, and this car matters.
A little less conversation, a little more action. All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me. A little more bite, a little less spark. A little less fight and a little more spark. Close your mouth and open up your heart and maybe satisfy me. Satisfy me, baby. Baby, close your eyes and listen to the music. Dig to the summer breeze. It's a groovy night and I can show you how to use it. You come along with me and put your mind at ease. Hey, a little less conversation, a little more action. All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me. A little more bite, a little less spark. A little less fight, a little more spark. Shut your mouth and open up your heart and baby, satisfy me. Satisfy me, baby. Come on, baby, I'm tired of talking. Grab your coat and let's start walking. Come on, come on. Come on, come on. Come on, come on. Don't procrastinate, don't articulate. Girl, it's getting late. You just sit and wait around. A little less conversation, a little more action. All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me. A little more bite, a little less spark. A little less fight, a little more spark. Shut your mouth and open up your heart. Baby, satisfy me. Satisfy me, baby. Satisfy me, girl. Satisfy me, baby. Satisfy me. Satisfy me, baby. Satisfy me, girl. Satisfy me. Satisfy me, baby. Satisfy me, baby. Satisfy me, baby.
Welcome back to my basement, and it's time for another episode of the Torchinsky Files. This week I have something I think pretty interesting. I was digging around through, again, the piles of old crap that I've got lying around everywhere here, and I found some brochures for something that's actually pretty fascinating, and it's something that we don't really think all that much about today, really. It's something called the ESV, or the Experimental Safety Vehicle Project, that was going on in America in the 1970s. Basically, cars used to be death traps. Cars from the 50s and 60s with metal dashes and steering wheels that would puncture your sternum and no crumple zones, and they were just gore fests when it came to an accident. And things didn't really change until well into probably the early 1980s that you actually started to get cars where your chances of coming out of a wreck in something other than, you know, what looks like a bowl of chili would be greater. And that's when we first started to see real energy absorbing bumpers and crumple zones, and then a little later on we got airbags, then in the 90s we had some active systems, and then today, of course, cars are really remarkably safe. Now, one of the big reasons why this change happened was because of this ESV program. Around 1965, there was a New York State project called the Safety Car Project, and there was a Senator, Edward Speno, and he was one of the people who got the project going. Basically, by 1970 is when the official federal government project started in conjunction with the Department of Transportation, and you actually had the ESV project. The standards that were required to make one of these ESV cars were incredibly high. So, for example, you had to keep passengers alive in a 50-mile-an-hour head-on collision. It had to withstand side impacts up to 30 miles an hour, a 75-mile-an-hour rear impact, which is insane if you think about it. They also wanted it to be able to stop from 60 miles an hour to 0 in 155 feet, which is really pretty good. And it had to survive 2 complete rollovers at 60 to 70 miles an hour. And it had to be able to, and this is my favorite one, execute a 180-degree turn at 70 miles an hour without rolling over. Apparently they had this idea that America was just this nation of stunt drivers doing jumps over bridges and all kinds of crazy shit like that, because these are insane requirements. Now, companies from all over the world were invited to participate here, so it wasn't just American companies. And it wasn't even just car makers. You had companies like Fairchild and AMF, who was used to making like sports equipment and other kinds of heavy machinery, just because I guess they thought it was an interesting engineering challenge and they thought there was money to be made there. MG made one one in a way to get around people driving drunk. They had, on the dashboard, you actually had to play like a little Simon game, you know, like different colored lights and sounds would light up, and you had to do like the memory thing of do them back in the right order. So they did that to see if you were too drunk to drive. They figured if you could play a little game of Simon, you're probably fine for driving wherever you're gonna go. I actually have 2 of the era pamphlets from some of these safety cars. So the first one is from Toyota, and Toyota's safety car is actually really cool looking. Most other companies were making big cars, big 4-door sedans, because that was going to be a little easier. Toyota decided to go with a smaller car, but you can see some interesting choices they made. Huge bumpers that were on these massive shock absorbers and could absorb impact, huge side marker lights for visibility and big signal lights, and you had all kinds of interesting safety features technically on the car. So for example, there was they didn't call them airbags, they called them, it was a gas bag system. So it was a gas bag system that inflated basically like an airbag. It's like a big cubicle airbag, and it was triggered with a radar type system as well. Way, way ahead of its time. This is from the early 70s, and they were using already radar range finding to check distances, just like modern cars are using today as part of driver assist systems. It's pretty remarkable. The inside, as you can see, had everything was padded. There was this massive bolster between the seats. It's padded steering wheel system, which I guess was housing the gas bag setup. A very early form of stability control, using these primitive computers to kind of calculate, you know, if things were skidding out of control, how to compensate for that using the rear wheel brake modulation. It's a fascinating little car. And again, this is just one of many. I also have, and this one I really like, is Volkswagen's pamphlet. So Volkswagen's safety car, I think, is especially interesting because Volkswagen traditionally, they were using a rear engine design. This was from 1972. Basically, this was a Type 4 VW engine, the kind used in the Volkswagen Type 4s and later in the buses, and then the Porsche 914. In a lot of ways, this might be the most advanced rear-engined air-cooled VW ever designed and built, because it's a big sedan, rear engine, 2 trunks. It's under the floor in the back, so you have a trunk in the rear and a trunk in the front. It's a packaging triumph. The packaging is fantastic. It's like the old Type 3 and Type 4 ideas just taken to an extreme. Plus, it has, they decided not to go with an airbag solution, and they're using these active seat belt systems that include a knee belt that somehow pops out. I'm not really sure. They describe it as like popping out from behind the fabric. I don't really quite understand how it's working, but it's using gas-fired pistons that tighten everything in the event of a wreck to keep everybody in place. They've also got a stability control system. Basically, they have a computer that checks for crosswinds, and it adjusts the steering accordingly. It's basically early lane keeping, except instead of using visual cues about lane markers, they're feeling if the car is actually shifting because of wind and keeping things straight. This is way, way advanced for 1972. They also had the automated belts that would become popular in the 80s. You'd open the door and they'd kind of move out of the way, and then you'd sit down and they go and they lock into place around you. This was a really remarkable car. The reason our cars today are as safe as they are is because of all the work that was done by, of course, the ESV cars. So the next time you're feeling safe in your car and you feel pretty good and you're not really worried about turning into just custard in your next wreck, you should take a moment and think back and thank the ESV program and all the companies that made these ridiculous but amazing and incredibly forward-thinking cars at the time, because really, they're why you're safe in your car today. All right, thanks everybody for coming out. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you soon.
And it started talking about the safety regulations that were about to come into effect and how they were going to ruin the aesthetics of automobiles. That because of safety regulations, ugly cars were going to be the result. Mm-hmm. And I was one of those, what are they talking about? I am now in the middle of the car business, and safety and beauty have nothing to do with each other, no correlation at all. And it really annoyed me that people were saying that, so I decided I was going to build the safest car in the world, and it was going to be the most beautiful car in the world. It just got under my skin. At the same time, at that time, I had 3 kids, 3 boys, and every Saturday we would watch cartoons. And in one of the Saturday morning shows was a show called 1999, A Space Odyssey. Now, this was in the late 60s. So 1999 was a long way away. But in the beginning of this program, every Saturday, a car would silently come up to the screen and the doors would open up electrically. And I went, oh, I have to have that. I have to have that. Why? I have no idea. Something hit me that every Saturday for those 15 seconds I was there watching. Something attracted me about the doors that pushed me to say, well, that would certainly be beautiful. And if you do it right, it would not stick into traffic when you open the door. So it would be a safety aspect of it that I could, and I went down the road of how to build the safest car on the road.
And one of the misconceptions about a gull-wing door is people see it going out like this for some reason and protruding. And in fact, one of the reasons a gull-wing door was put on the car was for safety reasons. We actually would pull the car into, it's about this far away from another car. And of course, you could not open the door of the other car and get out because the other car's door was at least this thick. So it was only 2 inches. Our car went like this, did not go out, it went straight up like this. So in that same distance, you could not get out of another car, we could actually get out of our car. Which meant if you were coming into traffic, you couldn't open the door into traffic, you'd be opening your door away from traffic. So again, it was for beauty, but it was also for safety.
So here's my question. Does this seem like kind of tight parking to you? I don't know, what do you think? Let's try this. Malcolm Bricklin, you're a genius.
Marshall Hobart went to Art Center College of Design in the Hancock Park area of Los Angeles. Herb Grasse and Stuart Reed, the designer of the Meyers SR, studied there as well. Marshall was hanging out at the beach with starlets and found a job at the Meyers factory. By day, he would take on design challenges for the car company, and by night he was developing his invention called the ski cart. When the Meyers company went bankrupt, all of his design work and prototypes were seized by the receiver. His solution to get his invention was to find Bruce Meyers to get him to help. Bruce couldn't help, but Marshall ended up helping Bruce with the fast track car.
And I would see Bruce later at some shows at Art Center, and we're still good friends, but we didn't really work on the Bricklin together too much. I did some automotive frame configurations with the bumper systems and that to help Bruce out. He was supposed to get some of that ready, so we worked together on some minor things, but then it was a test to see if I could speed up the body design of that car. And as I realized Bruce wasn't there, about the same time I was called into the one design area, and I was introduced to Malcolm. It was impressive, and then asked to kind of be there, and it got around to, he just gestured toward the model that was half completed, I'd say, and asked me if I could design that car, the way I remember it, the quote. And I was a little staggered and a little nervous, and sort of muttered out, "Yes, I can," something like that. And there was some little laughter at my reaction. I was young then, and pretty overwhelmed by this, and it seemed to be on. And he would then say to Tony Kopp, the second man there under Malcolm, who would be my boss immediate, we'll take Marshall in there and work out the money. I remember how that was a great sound. So that happened, and I was on it the next day doing little sketches. And I wasn't doing it like the school taught. I was doing little stationary-sized drawings, and I just put car shapes out as fast as I could think them up. Remember, number 3 is what they picked, and that's what happened. Dick Dean was a famous figure, too. Bruce Meyers and Malcolm Bricklin, and Dick Dean comes in. This was like a fantasy. So I was just taking it all in. The design was picked by that time, and they were going to put Dick on the work of the the large pattern. So he was making a big wooden box and putting foam all over it. Out there at Newport Beach, we were all of the surfboard generation, so we weren't like the clay cars in Detroit. This was going to be like a large votive boat hull or a surfboard, and so in foam I started carving the body after the sketch was done. I don't remember, it took much more than a week probably of yardstick and hand tools. It wasn't anything like Detroit technology, and you could see a car there. And what I heard was he came in with potential investors, and they're pretty dazzled with this little shape, and it was off and running. Wouldn't know much about the Bricklin for some time. Don't have the time down right now. But it went back to Detroit, and I suppose I heard some rumors, but wasn't sure. But suddenly there was this broadcasting of this new car, and I was just stunned. So pretty excited that I had a part in it.
In Southern California, Dick Dean is known as the master of chops, a builder of fantasy cars for Hollywood. Perfect credentials for Malcolm Bricklin and his new sports car. When he meets Dean, Bricklin already has a drawing. This is the car he wants Dean to make.
I got blocks of urethane foam. I went ahead and started carving the car as close to the pictures I can do, and it was a very secret project. I mean, you had to be really a good friend of Malcolm before he'd bring you back and let you see it. He had a little nervous feeling about somebody wanting to destroy his creation.
In just 90 days, the Gray Ghost, as it is dubbed, is done. To raise the money to turn his model into a prototype, he shoots this film of the car. And with Dean's help, he ships the Gray Ghost east to Philadelphia for a critical meeting with the First Pennsylvania Bank.
The instructions were that he would come out and, I would open the hood, open the door, open the trunk. Then if he went like that, I drove it away as far as I could before it fell apart.
Thanks to the Gray Ghost, Bricklin raises close to $1 million.
When I was developing the car between 72 and 74, I got a call from John DeLorean, who I had known because his brother worked for me in a company called Fast Track. And he gave me a call, and I met him in his Stretch Chevrolet, when he was in charge of the Chevrolet division in General Motors. And he wanted to see the people who were working on my car, which were a lot of the people I had hired from the Corvette team. And we sat around looking at the car, and he informed me that he would be available to leave General Motors and become my president, which got me extremely excited to have a man of his caliber involved with us while we were building this car. So I took him to the First National Bank and told him that I wanted to hire John DeLorean as quarterback for the team, and John wanted $1.7 million to leave General Motors to become our president. And we agreed on that. And the next day I got a call from John, and he told me he wanted it after taxes. I said, John, I don't think it has anything to do with money. I think it has to do with the name of the car. So I don't think we can get together. So John and I didn't get together as him working for us, but as soon as I put the car into bankruptcy, he gave me a call again. And this time he wanted to hire my crew, and he wanted to build his own car. And he wanted, of course, copy it in every way known to man. And it happened to be, I happened to have our pre-prototype that he had seen that he wanted to copy exactly. And I gave him permission. So John DeLorean's car is the exact car that I rejected, and still have that prototype that was designed in 1972.
It's even fun when people confuse the Bricklin with the DeLorean, the celebrated time machine of Marty McFly in the movie Back to the Future.
People ask me why I painted my DeLorean lime green, and of course you tell them that it's not a DeLorean and they don't believe you. And you get the comments, you know, where's the flux capacitor, and will the car actually do 88 miles an hour? Just to clarify matters, we had t-shirts made up to tell people that it's not Marty McFly's time machine.
Now, it was not a drivable, it was a drivable, but it was not a manufacturable prototype. It wasn't engineered in any way. It just looked similar to what I wanted, but not exactly. And when I finally started understanding more about what I was getting into and realized I had to go to Detroit, I had to hire all the right people, we had to start from scratch because clay models had to be built to 1/10,000th of an inch before you can make the tooling. And then acrylic reacts one way and fiberglass another way, and it all shrinks and moves, and tooling had to be all sorts of things that I had no idea, but I did know I had to hire different kind of people.
First thing we did, and of course you have to understand we were very naive at the time, and we just assumed you build one car and then of course you're ready to manufacture. So we came up with a basic design that we later put into our first car, which we call the gray experimental car, which we thought was going to be representative of what we're going to build. Right. We went out, we started hiring some people from the big three who really knew what they were doing, and they informed us that although it was an interesting design exercise, it had no validity in the real world of automobile business, which was not only disappointing, but at first we wouldn't even believe what they had to say. And then they started explaining to us, we have to start all over with clays, but this time they have to be accurate to 2/10,000ths of an inch. Wow. Yes, sir. Adios, hat. I'm old enough to remember serials in the movie. And it always seems there was a cliffhanger. Somebody was hanging by a thread. But that really wasn't the end, because when you came to the movie the next week, they saved him. We were lucky enough to hire a man by the name of Herb Grasse, who was professional and knew how to take the car that we had built and keep the same feel, but add the necessary touches to make it manufacturable automobile.
Malcolm and I hit it off super right in the beginning. He's a free thinker, and so am I. His ideas are 2001 all the way, and he came to me with an idea: develop a safety sports car. This is a challenge. Detroit is used to the boxy type of vehicle. You take your large luxury automobiles, they're almost an answer to low-cost housing, and this was a designer's dream.
Hydraulic door with a jack screw at the A-post, which would put us at the center of the load, and run by cable to a motor which would be buried in the B-post.
We were looking for the best people around. We were also looking for the most open-minded people.
You have to have a power force.
Well, wait a second, stop. Do we agree that if you move this down this way, you can have all the pressure you want? We weren't looking for people who just could come to us and say, this is the way it's always been done, this is the way you must do it. We were very fortunate. Most of the people we hired and most of the people who have stuck with us are those kind of people.
Well, stop.
You say it seems to make sense. You're saying that it's going to be more difficult than he says.
That's right.
Fine. It's going to be one or the other or someplace in between.
Yeah.
But rather than theorize anymore, because some of our very good ideas weren't good and some of our very bad ideas were great. Why don't we just go ahead?
Let me tell you how I hired this guy. He was a known designer who had worked for Ford, and he had his own design shop now, and he was extremely hippie. Big, shaggy beard, and Hawaiian kinds of shirt. And I was interviewing him, and he had a place out in Livonia, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. And I stayed over for a couple of days. I was interviewing a number of people, and he told me that he usually works late at his design studio into like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And I wake up early, so I decided to surprise him. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I show up at his design studio, and there he was painting his secretary. Now, painting his secretary meant that she was nude, and he was painting her. Paint on her.
Painting on her body.
On her. So he was making her look like she was dressed, as a matter of fact. And of course, I'm a womanizer, so immediately I was taken by him and hired him.
For reasons other than that, though.
His name was Herb Grasse.
Grasse?
Grasse. This is in the 70s, when grass was something people did smoke if you were a hippie, and he did not. Even though his name was Grasse, he said, I didn't because of my name. So he was a straight guy that looked different than who he really was, but extremely talented man. And he added the right kind of nice finishing features that made what Bruce Meyers had done relatively quickly. He had refined it to something that it is today.
Herb Grasse designed the Batmobile and designed the Bricklin. That curve on the hood is his girlfriend's hip. She was a Playboy bunny.
There isn't a single inch of the car that can be duplicated, and Bricklin discovers it's poorly designed to boot.
And I said, well, you can't really build that car. Plus the surfaces are incorrect. It doesn't have feeling. A car has to have feeling to be, you look at a Corvette, it's got shape. What you have there looks like someone got a new belt sander for Christmas and developed the vehicle.
Herb Grasse is a young hotshot designer from Ford. Bricklin convinces him to come on board by selling the car as a designer's dream, a chance to create something from the ground up. Persuaded, Grasse begins to redesign the Grey Ghost, now dubbed the Red Car. But Bricklin gives him a deadline, 90 days to create a clay model and engineer the car, work that normally takes 3 years. Once again, the reason for the rush is money. To keep it flowing, Bricklin must convince the banks that his car is a winner.
90 jours. On a 90 jours pour prouver au monde qu'on est les meilleurs.
Tu veux qu'on fasse en 3 mois ce qui prend normalement 3 ans?
Terry, à Détroit, construire un char moyen, ça prend 3 ans avec une équipe moyenne. Sur l'équipe Bricklin, il y a juste l'élite. Vous êtes ici parce que vous êtes tanné de construire des boîtes à beurre? Regardez dehors. Toutes les chars sont pareils. Nous autres, on veut plus. On veut construire le char. On peut révolutionner le marché automobile américain, puis montrer à Détroit que les choses peuvent se faire autrement.
Herb Grasse, qui était marié avec une ex-playmate de Playboy, avait le mandat de dessiner une voiture qui était tout autant sexée que sécuritaire. Et c'était ça le défi que lui avait donné Malcolm Bricklin.
Ça t'intéresse?
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Bricklin SV-1, véhicule sécuritaire numéro 1. Moi, ce que je veux, c'est Saint-Christophe déguisé en stripper. Sécuritaire pour madame, sexy pour monsieur, à la portée de tous. C'est une opportunité qui passe une fois, puis pour toi, c'est un matin.
Malcolm, tout est possible, mais il faudrait que tu fasses des concessions.
On livre pas un hit en faisant des concessions.
Well, basically what happened is every other day was a dog and pony show. We had First Pensy Bank coming through, and we had to do the typical dog and pony. So Malcolm says, make this thing look good. So we busted our butt to get that thing done. And we got it done, and the taillights didn't have pizzazz. So I was driving a Pantera at the time, so I ran out, got the taillights out of the Pantera and put them in there, painted them clay colors. So that's why the Bricklin ended up with Pantera taillights in it.
The red car sets a pattern. Haste will plague the rest of the Bricklin project. But this is a part of the Bricklin style, and it will cost millions.
I absolutely was over my head. I had no idea what I was doing. I was definitely opening up a dark door and walking in.
With the red car finished, Bricklin begins questing around for a place to manufacture the vehicle and for someone to foot the bill. He finds both about as far from the car-making world of Detroit as he can get.
A friend of mine suggested New Brunswick. Of course, my problem was I knew of New Brunswick in Georgia, and I knew there was a New Brunswick in New Jersey, but I didn't know about the New Brunswick in Canada.
Richard Hatfield was born on April 9, 1931, and was the youngest of 5 children, the son of a politician and a potato distributor from Hartland, New Brunswick. As a New Brunswicker of the time, he had a privileged upbringing going to private academies. After graduating from Acadia University and later Dalhousie University as a lawyer, it was quite clear that Hatfield was pre-programmed to become a politician. He first won a seat in the New Brunswick legislature in 1961 as a Conservative, and eventually as the Premier in 1970. There is no doubt that Richard Hatfield dedicated his life to making things better for New Brunswick, and that he had little regard for the arrogance that came from Ontario and Quebec. He was a trusting and a genuine person that had a passion for the arts and traveling the world. Hatfield's best attribute was encouraging New Brunswickers to use where they came from as an asset rather than a liability.
Among his achievements, Hatfield promoted both linguistic communities in New Brunswick. He was the premier who created 2 distinct school systems, Anglophone and Francophone.
His instincts, there's nobody even close in this province to have the political instincts this fellow had.
He also, of course, worked very hard to give the Acadians in New Brunswick a bigger place in the sun.
In 1982, he also adopted the bill recognizing the equality of the 2 linguistic communities of New Brunswick, English and French, or Bill 88. Even though he was Anglophone, he received the support of the French community because he continued the spirit of the Equal Opportunity Program started by the previous Robichaud government.
So there was an expectation when Richard came into power that he probably would reverse the program of equal opportunity. Well, he didn't. In fact, he enhanced it.
And it was fairly soon winning support, a lot of support from the Acadian Francophone parts of the province.
He was loved up there. People in the North Shore, he was comfortable. He was like sitting in the midst of a whole lot of people who were speaking another language, and he was at home.
Robichaud often described Hatfield as a worthy political adversary, but not a political enemy.
He was known at that point to be somebody that thought that a lot of what Louis Robichaud had done was good.
I love politics, I love New Brunswick, I love the people of New Brunswick.
Richard Hatfield était avant tout un bon vivant. Mais un bon vivant qui profitait de tous les moments de sa vie, autant quand il pouvait s'amuser que quand il pouvait être à la tête du gouvernement à diriger la province.
I want history to record, I was there.
Il s'est créé son réseau de bons vivants. Et New York était une place où son réseau lui permettait de bien vivre, autant dans sa vie publique que dans sa vie privée. Voilà que lui arrive un projet bien fait avec un bon vendeur en plus, un playboy. En allant lancer la Bricklin avec Richard Hatfield et Malcolm Bricklin à New York, la même reconnaissance était transférée sur le projet et la province du Nouveau-Brunswick. Et ça, c'était le rêve.
And he was willing to risk his whole reputation on doing something good for the province. You know, people insinuated a lot of things, but that man was as honest as any man I've ever met. He worked all day, worked all night, and worked all day, and worked all night to find a way to make the province better known and a better place to live.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, tout le monde vous attend.
Du lait ainsi que vous êtes.
Oh, merci. Le premier point pour la réunion, là, c'est l'hôpital français Georges Dumont à Moncton. Puis tu sais à quel point que je le veux, ça.
Hey, c'est une période où la crise de l'essence nous avait marqué. D'abord, j'allais en reportage aux États-Unis. J'arrivais à 10 heures du soir dans mes chambres d'hôtel et le thermostat était fermé à 0 alors qu'il faisait moins 15 dehors, je gelais. Ça, c'était du jamais vu les années avant. Au Canada, on suggérait à réduire les vitesses à 50 sur les routes au lieu d'aller aux limites de 60. Entre les années 70 et aujourd'hui, le sens de sexy n'a plus le même. Sauf que la voiture, ça fait partie de la culture américaine. La voiture donne un statut. Alors, un jeune homme, par exemple, qui avait une Mustang, à l'époque où j'étais jeune, ou qui avait une Corvette, c'est pas l'image ou le portrait ou la carrosserie, c'était le statut de Don Juan, il y avait, comment je te dirais, ça lui donnait comme une aura de beau garçon.
When Malcolm Bricklin arrives in New Brunswick with great hopes, he discovers that Fredericton is virtually shut down. The St. John River has burst its banks, and the province is in a state of emergency.
At the time he came in May, the legislature was flooded, many books were damaged that were in the basement. The Beaverbrook Hotel, which is where the Premier lived at the time, was closed down and he had to move out. And in the midst of this is when Malcolm Bricklin came in, flew into Fredericton to meet for the first time the Premier. And they had an informal meeting.
But then I met the Premier.
Right.
And he was worldly, and he was enthusiastic, and he was sharp. And there was a real connection right away.
So what was that connection based on?
I think what we had in common was I had a vision to build a car, and he had a vision to build his province.
Hatfield.
So we both had the same goal. Both of us had visions, and they would match.
Hatfield was trendy. The car was trendy. Bricklin was trendy. It clicked.
In June, Richard Hatfield announces that New Brunswick will invest $6 million to manufacture the Bricklin. But the decision is rushed by a leak to the media. The province never finishes its assessment of the deal, and Malcolm Bricklin never mentions that the car still isn't ready for production.
At the A-post, which would put
In Detroit, the engineers are still struggling with the design. The gull-wing doors won't open, and the acrylic body simply cracks. When Terry Tanner comes on board as head of manufacturing, he's shocked by the state of the car and the St. John factory where it'll be built.
À Bedford, une petite ville paisible située en Virginie, où en apparence, il ne semble pas y avoir de lien avec la voiture Bricklin. C'est pourtant ici que l'on retrouve Terry Tanner, responsable à l'époque de la production de la Bricklin et qui, encore aujourd'hui, répare et restaure ce type de voiture dans son garage. Ses clients proviennent d'un peu partout en Amérique.
If I had to fix something else, I'd probably retire. But I don't want to retire from Bricklin because I still got things I want to do. We're working on a development program right now, making another mold. So you could always do a little bit more and you can do it a little bit better. And that's what we do.
Terry Tanner compte sur son fidèle employé John Lodge pour l'appuyer.
It's a way of life. I love the car. There's nothing else in the world like it.
Stacy, la fille de Terry, peut témoigner du lien qui unit sa famille à la Bricklin.
And then when they folded, brought it all to the house. So we were all involved in it.
Cette voiture unique en son genre porte peut-être le nom de Bricklin, mais pour bien des propriétaires de cette voiture, elle porte un peu beaucoup le nom de Terry Tanner.
You've got to meet Terry Tanner if you own a Bricklin, and he is the guru for our car, and so he's a great resource and a great guy to keep this car alive.
Le plus grand défi était de réussir à construire une voiture de A à Z. Personne au sein des grandes compagnies d'automobiles n'a eu cette opportunité-là.
Son défi, faire du rêve de Malcolm Bricklin une réalité.
En voyant le prototype, je me suis dit, c'est amusant, mais est-ce que ça marche?
2 usines sont nécessaires. Une à Minto pour fabriquer la carrosserie, l'autre à Saint-Jean pour l'assemblage. Terry Tanner arrive au Nouveau-Brunswick.
On a atterri au petit aéroport de Saint-Jean, puis on est allé à l'usine. Il y avait 9 trous dans le plancher, la chaîne de montage était mal enlignée, 2 personnes étaient à côté sur une structure. Alors j'ai dit, vous voulez rire de moi? Il y avait aussi un compresseur qui semblait dater de l'époque de Noé.
Le lendemain, il se rend à Minto, situé à plus de 150 km de Saint-Jean.
Là-bas, il n'y avait qu'un motel et une pompe à essence. C'était Minto. Dans l'usine, j'ai vu une énorme caisse dans laquelle se trouvait la machine à thermoformage pour la carrosserie, la plus grande du genre au monde. Personne n'avait ouvert cette boîte. Il y avait aussi un bureau, un contreplaqué de 4x8 et une chaise volée au motel. C'était tout. On devait mouler la carrosserie dans une matière chauffante, dans une cabane pas isolée, avec 8 pieds de neige à l'extérieur. Vous voulez quelque chose d'insensé? C'est insensé.
That decision was made by people in management who couldn't spell car, had no concept of what they're doing. They didn't have any idea. And they were family.
Living to the Bricklin credo, Malcolm once again places his relatives in key positions. His mother heads the complaints department. His sister is the company's lawyer. But the real problem is his father, Albert.
Wherever he went, St. John or Minto, he would absolutely not allow anybody to make decisions, and he would make decisions over their heads. And of course, because he had direct connections with Malcolm, Malcolm always supported him. And that's why the executives kept leaving.
My dad, who had no car experience but lots of common sense, he was there to make sure that the money was spent right, that they were doing a good job, that the employees had a fair shake. And he did that job really well.
But while chaos reigns in his Canadian operations, Malcolm Bricklin is in Arizona. A few weeks after signing the deal with New Brunswick, he moves there to live out a lifelong dream.
I remember when I was a little kid, the thing I'd rather be, I wanted to be a policeman and I wanted to be a fireman, but I think the thing I really wanted to be was a cowboy.
So he rented an office in the highest building in Phoenix and redecorated it. He sat in a saddle and dressed in Western clothing and immediately became the model of a Western cowboy.
At the same time, he moves his family into a serviced casita run by the Hilton Hotel. He even hires a bodyguard to drive his Silver Wraith Rolls-Royce.
This was kind of a cross between Disneyland and Detroit. The guy had flair, and he worked it. He worked it really good.
Well, it wasn't that dramatic. I mean, it wasn't something, I woke up one night and said, oh my God, I must build a car. I was destined to do that. And it really wasn't a long boyhood dream. I mean, I've always liked beautiful cars, and I've always liked to own beautiful cars, and in many cases I've been fortunate and been able to own some what I call beautiful cars. But they've always dissatisfied me. And yet, although the American auto industry is always knocked for not being progressive enough, when you get into a Chevrolet or a Ford or a Chrysler or an American Motors product, you can usually depend when you turn the key, it's going to start. It just seemed to me they missed one thing that people really want, and that's some beauty on the outside. When they did come out with a beautiful car of any limited production, it was eaten up. The Corvette has shown consistently that they sell everything they can build, although they chose not to build tremendous quantities. The Datsun came out with a magnificent car in the 240 in that it was a pretty car at a reasonable price. And they sold all they could build, which was even considerably more than the Corvette. Yet nobody took it to mean that they could combine all these features and still sell even more if they wanted to. And maybe because they didn't want to, it makes no difference to me, but I saw the hole in that market and I said, hey, if we could add all those things and add safety, which seems to be incongruous with beauty, then maybe we'll take a step forward, not necessarily for the good of the world, but for a very profitable venture, which in the same turn would be good for future generations and changes in the automobile industry. A lot of people told me I was crazy, and these of an Acura, yeah, a few people told me I was full of shit. I thought less of them when they did. I think more of them now because they were more right than wrong at the time. I just didn't realize it, thank God.
Malcolm had the faculty of dreaming and working very hard to make that dream come true. Many of us, including myself, we dream of things that we would like to do. And we watch the boats go down the river, things of that nature. We don't do anything about it. We are armchair dreamers. He is one of those people that dream and go about trying to make it happen.
He always thinks when something is successful. He never thinks if. When I first met Mal, I was getting over another love. And I had 2 other dates before I met him, and I went on those 2 dates, and that was the last time I dated anybody. I was all of 17. I thought he wasn't the best-looking guy going. He had big horn-rimmed glasses and a crew cut, and he was tall and very, very skinny. But he was really nice, and he had a lot of personality. We just sort of, I guess, hit it off. I always knew that Mal would be successful. How successful, I didn't know, and what's more, I really didn't care.
This is from, it looks like a child. Dear Mr. Bricklin, thank you for sending me the poster and letter. You are probably one of the only persons now connected with a big company who is nice enough to answer a kid. Since the last letter I wrote, I have gotten 3 magazines just because they have something about the Bricklin. P.S. Your poster of the Bricklin is the only thing my mom ever let me hang directly on the wallpaper in my room.
But up in St. John, Bricklin, Canada is floundering. Production still hasn't begun, yet bills are flowing in for everything from engines to Bricklin's extensive travel expenses.
My strength was making sure the design was what I wanted and the sales, and then hiring people to run the facility. One of the problems we had is we had to take Detroit experts and bring them to New Brunswick. And it's a tough place to live. You know, it's not sunny a lot of the times. There's not a lot of places to go. Therefore, management didn't want to stay there and pay attention on a 24-hour basis like management should in a case like that. And I was out there 7 cars, and I was not in Canada all the time, you know, building a car.
Less than 4 months after signing the deal, the Bricklin is in trouble. But Hatfield knows it's too late to back out. New Brunswick's first $6 million is nearly spent, and the Premia's future is now firmly entwined with the car and its maker. From now on, the 2 men have the same goal: make the car whatever the cost.
En regardant le budget alloué au projet Bricklin, on voyait bien qu'il manquait de l'argent. Pourtant, Malcolm est un homme qui renvoie l'image de la réussite. Je dois lui donner ce crédit. Il est déterminé, il a de bonnes idées. Par contre, il a du mal à les réaliser.
What he doesn't do well is make them a reality.
In June of 1974, a twin-engine plane carrying Richard Hatfield and a crate of fresh Atlantic salmon heads for New York City. Malcolm Bricklin is already here. For the American promoter and the Canadian premier, this is a critical moment. Tomorrow, the Bricklin will be unveiled in front of the American media and 1,000 invited guests at the Four Seasons Hotel on Park Avenue. But already plans are going awry.
New York, we had to introduce the car to all those dealers and to the press and to the politicians and to everybody who worked with the company. It was going to be our opening, and we rented the Four Seasons. Now, to give you an idea how little money we spent, you could go to the Four Seasons today and have lunch, and it's going to cost you $150 to $200. We rented the Four Seasons for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 1,000 people. We paid $25,000, but there was one problem.
Hey, nothing but the best for New York. C'est mon frère de l'Atlantique. Bonsoir, Monsieur Bricklin.
Chez Hatfield, c'est toujours un plaisir.
Écoute, Dick, changement de plan. On pourra pas aller à ton club machin truc, là. La voiture est...
Le Christ de char fitait pas dans les portes.
Il veut dire que la voiture rentre pas dans le restaurant.
Never before done in the history of the Four Seasons. The cars were there. The Premier was there. When we go to put in the car, they took off the glass, and the car is 1 inch too wide. No matter how we turn the car, we can't get it in to the building. And I'm sitting there saying, at 9 o'clock in the morning, we are going to introduce these things, and those cars are going to be inside, and I don't give a shit how you get them in there.
Malcolm a déniché une gang de New Jersey.
And on the spot, we called in welders, and they brought in steel, and they made a spit. Like they put an animal, and they turn it on the side, and we turned the car on the side and moved it in. And we then put the glass back in, and we had our show.
So what we did is we rotated the car like a rotisserie, put it outside, drained all the fluids out of it, ran it through the thing, pushing it, and making a left-hand turn by the tapestry. And this makes Fear Factor look like a kid's program, because we're, one screw up, and we're buying a big piece of artwork.
Le symbole, c'est New York, faut pas oublier. New York, c'est le symbole du rêve américain, économique. L'Amérique qui s'est faite en attirant des gens de partout dans le monde qui ont émigré, puis c'est la réussite économique.
Je déclare officiellement cette voiture une Bricklin SV-1.
D'aller lancer la voiture à New York, d'une part, tu atteignais le marché, mais d'autre part, tu correspondais à la vie de bon vivant de Richard Hatfield. Et Malcolm Bricklin intégrait Richard Hatfield dans un réseau qui était celui des artistes. Mais l'idée de lancer la Bricklin à New York, on peut pas l'analyser autrement en dehors du contexte de la personnalité de Richard Hatfield. C'est un bon vivant qui s'est amusé dans son bureau de premier ministre, comme dans les boîtes de nuit ou dans les spectacles avec les artistes acadiens.
Ah, Monsieur Hatfield! Bonjour! Hey. Yes. Heureux de vous voir dans l'underground de New York. Ah. Vous connaissez sans doute Johnny Melanson, grande célébrité de l'émission New York Talk Talk.
Patty.
Patty! Ah, enchanté, Patty.
Je suis la secrétaire de Grasse.
Je pense qu'on est ici pour ça. On va fêter ça en l'honneur de la très belle soirée que vous nous offrez ici à New York, Monsieur Hatfield.
Afterwards, I remember a story. The Premier was there, friends were there, some dealers were there. Everybody was celebrating and feeling really good about themselves. And one wife was having lots of conversations with the Premier. She was trying to get very friendly with him. And she asked him, well, do I call you Mr. Premier or do I call you Richard? What should I call you? And he said, Your Royal Highness will be just fine. The phenomenal public relations that came from that one introduction sold us 40,000 cars with back orders, and we never spent one penny for advertising. We canceled our advertising campaign, and our sales were over.
The New York opening is a massive success. Dealers come with their families, and Malcolm Bricklin makes a huge impression.
As he addressed the podium to speak, you would have thought he was Jesus Christ. When he finished speaking, the crowd promoted him to God. Now that's how charismatic Malcolm Bricklin is. You have very highly successful dealers looking at an extremely nebulous forecast on a very strange car, and they're all grinning like fools when Malcolm Bricklin gets through.
And there again, we were lucky enough to meet a man like Premier Hatfield from New Brunswick.
I thought, you know, this man is for real, and this is exciting, and this is something that this proposal will work, and this is a response to a high demand.
Are you nervous today about your investment in Bricklin?
No, I'm not nervous. I'm very confident. I have been very confident. If you start, become involved in something, you've got to believe in it.
If I had failed, I would be a con man.
Right.
And if I succeed, then I'm an entrepreneur.
What is the root of it? It's faith, personal faith in what you're doing. And, you know, he has it in abundance. He has it to give away.
We were asked, when we were first given our loan, when we thought we would be in production. We gave our best estimates, which were horrendous. You do have to understand that they've said it can't be done, and we have to admit it has been difficult. And since we have never built a car, it became very difficult to estimate. And because of those wrong estimations, it gave valid grounds for questioning the validity of the total project. Fortunately, we had very, very strong backing of confidence from the province that we should be able to put more quality into that car than any other car that's ever been built. We have an advantage over people like Rolls-Royce, who do not use a tremendous amount of machinery, but use a tremendous amount of hand labor. And we have an advantage over Detroit that uses a tremendous amount of machinery, and the hand labor has to work too fast.
The most important thing is to make a gut determination, and that's the only way you can make it. You know, is this man who says he wants to come to your province and wants to invest and has this proposal, is he a con artist or is he really an entrepreneur? I made the decision that Malcolm Bricklin was an entrepreneur.
I believe we've shown we can build a car and get it off in a fairly short period of time in relation to what a normal car company does. We didn't just build a car, we built a magnificent car that will be acclaimed around the world, that we'll all be proud of, and me especially to be proud to have my name on the back of that car. Thank you, and thank you very much. The man who made it possible, Premier Richard Hatfield.
We in New Brunswick, in the opinion of many, are not supposed to be in the business of producing automobiles. We are supposed to be hewers of wood and drawers of water. Bricklin has been and is an advertisement for New Brunswick. As such, it speaks well for our province. And because its success will be our success, we ought to speak well of the Bricklin. Malcolm, come on, let's go for a drive.
Puis c'était des rangées après rangées, monde après monde, pour venir voir la Bricklin, la toucher. Surtout, c'était de voir les gens la toucher.
You know, I just picked in the airport today copies of Penthouse and Gentleman's Quarterly, both of which have articles on the Bricklin. There aren't many products made in many provinces that get that kind of international recognition.
You got to understand, this is like the sexiest car going in like 1974, 1975. Hugh Hefner had one, Johnny Carson had one. Like it was like, this was like the thing to have, even though like there were bugs, no question.
Yet despite the theater of the day, New Brunswick's car still isn't ready for production. Few beside Hatfield and Bricklin realize that the car on display is handmade. In September of 1974, the first Bricklin finally rolls off the assembly line in St. John. In New Brunswick, the excitement is palpable.
I had people phoning me, trying to lobby to see if I could move them up on the list of people that were waiting to buy a Bricklin car. There were a lineup of people. There were hundreds waiting.
But production is still plagued with problems. Although the line is moving, the gull-wing doors and the body are still bleeding the company dry.
The doors themselves are the car. They are the sex of the car, they are the appeal of the car, and they are the grief of the car.
At the Minto plant just north of St. John, there's also a crisis. This is where the revolutionary acrylic body is being manufactured. But not only is it proving hard to make, no one can work out how to glue parts to it.
They called the new car SV-1 for Safety Vehicle 1. Despite the rush job, the final design turned out well, with an edgy, aggressive, futuristic profile. Compared to the lumpy, frumpy cars of the mid-70s, this styling looks a full decade ahead of its time. And as much as I love hood ornaments and chrome trim and vinyl roofs, I also really like the Bricklins' no-frills aggressiveness. My only complaint is that the rear bumper does look a little chunky. But we'll come back to that. But the car still had a long way to go before it could be built. A large portion of the initial loans went not into manufacturing, but into finishing the car's engineering. A firm called AVC Engineering created the chassis for the SV-1, overseen by Grasse. True to its name, safety was integral to the design, including a built-in roll cage, reinforced side rails, impressive side impact door beams, and an enclosed fuel tank. All commonplace items today, but certainly not back then. Another critical element were massive front and rear bumpers, engineered to withstand a 10-mile-per-hour impact with no damage to the car, double the government's 5-mile-per-hour standard. Despite the company's limited resources, early crash tests were promising. Even the doors were touted as a safety feature, swinging up and out of the way to reduce the danger of getting out on a busy street. But that wasn't the only reason Malcolm insisted on having them.
And of course, as soon as you add gull-wing doors, it adds something very magic to any car. Take the ugliest car you ever saw and put some cool doors on it, and you got yourself a cool car. I mean, it's that simple.
Of course, a cool car needs cool colors, but building a paint facility is a massive investment, and Malcolm also wanted a surface that could resist scratches and dents, which led to a radical idea.
And I met with some people from Roman Haas, and they made plastic for bathrooms, sheets of plastic to put on the wall instead of tiles. And that's solid acrylic, that's solid paint. So I said to them, well, how do you do? What do you do? You vacuum form it. And then you, for what we need, reinforce it with fiberglass.
With plastic panels reinforced by fiberglass, the body couldn't rust. And since they were solid color the whole way through, minor scratches could just be sanded out. No repainting needed.
And they had 5 colors, that's why I have the colors I got. That's what they gave me, period. And I hated the vomit, I called it that vomit, not the green, but there was an off-color, greenish, vomity looking thing.
The color he's referring to is called safety suntan. And although it's an odd choice for a car, it wouldn't look out of place in a 1970s bathroom. This car's safety red looks more like orange, but the actual safety orange cars are a much lighter shade. The use of third-party components continued under the car's skin as well. Brakes and suspension were largely sourced from the AMC Hornet. The motor would be a 220 horsepower AMC 360 cubic inch V8. Or at least, that was the plan.
So our people made a deal with them, and we went off and engineered it into our car and did all the safety things necessary. And about 3 months before we're ready to start taking shipments for the delivery, we already had the grand opening, we had 40,000 back orders, we're ready to go. I get notified American Motors will not ship. Will not ship. I just spent $4 million building prototypes and doing the engineering for that engine. And I wanted to buy 1,000 a month.
According to Malcolm, American Motors suddenly gave him the cold shoulder and refused to deliver the engines he'd already signed a contract for. According to a friend of mine familiar with AMC, Bricklin had been publicly bad-mouthing his supplier to the automotive press, which probably didn't help the situation. Finally, Bricklin got a hold of Bill Luneburg, American Motors' gruff president with a penchant for colorful language.
I called the secretary and I said, this is a life and death situation from my part. I need to talk to Mr. Luneburg. I don't want to make threats, but it would really be smarter to meet me now than have to deal with the press and the lawyers later. Message back, all right, you be here tomorrow at 11 o'clock. We come into his office, he has his vice presidents. I go through the story. We had your word, we did the engineering, they're expecting it a certain date. He said, well, let me tell you a story. I have been here a long time trying to sell cars. It's been hard. I can sell every single car I can build right now. That was a time when for some reason cars were walking out the door faster than you can build them. He said, after all these years, every time I sell you an engine, I lose a car sale. If you think I'm going to sell you engines so that I can't sell my cars, you're out of your mind. I said, well, let me tell you my story, because I'm not going to be out of my mind. I'm going to be out of my business, and I'm going to lose a lot of money. So what you're doing is pushing me out that window. And if I have to do that, I'm grabbing your tie because I'm landing on your stomach when we land. Here's what I'm doing. You don't give me what I want, I go out the door, I get on a plane, and I go to Washington. And I don't leave Washington until they know you're in a conspiracy with the other big three, putting me out of business. And here's my contract, and here's what they did. It's not the way I want to do business, but it is the way I'm going to save my ass if you don't give me what I want.
Let's stop for a moment of context. In the mid-1970s, GM, Ford, Chrysler, and to a lesser extent AMC, still ruled the automotive landscape in the US. Sentiment toward the American automakers was somewhat negative, as many people felt the companies had too much political power and were stiffing consumers with dangerous, unreliable, inefficient vehicles. Some more aggressive critics even advocated breaking up the car companies under antitrust laws. So, Malcolm's scheme of exposing a monopolistic conspiracy does sound a little wild, but it was by no means an empty threat.
And then he started in, who the hell do you think you are? I mean, you little, and on and on and on. And I said, I don't blame you one bit. What are you going to give me? He said, I'm going to give you 700 cars. And after 700 cars, go f yourself.
And so for 1974, Bricklin managed to build 772 SV-1s, each with AMC's 360 V8. Most had 3-speed automatic transmissions, although an estimated 155 had 4-speed manuals. The interior used some outsourced components as well. However, this is the only car I've ever seen with a rolling numbers digital clock. It's a super cool touch that I spent far too much time filming, waiting for the perfect shot. Conspicuously absent are an ashtray and a cigarette lighter. Remember, this was the 1970s. But having given it up himself, Malcolm thought smoking was dangerous, especially while driving. According to dealers, that didn't stop SV-1 owners from adding their own aftermarket ashtrays and smoking more than just cigarettes in their cars.
Bricklin is a unique car for its time. It has no lighter. It has no cup holders. I'm a non-smoker. Malcolm is a non-smoker. And the truth behind the matter is, we never noticed it missing until we started selling the cars and someone says, "Where's the damn lighter?" And I don't know. So then what we did is we had a beanbag made up with an ashtray on it.
Bricklin lighters and beanbag ashtrays were used as promotional tools to help sell the car once they discovered their mistake. From lemons, you make lemonade.
Stepping over the wide door sills takes some finesse, and the cabin doesn't offer a great deal of room. But it's enough for these owners to take regular road trips. I didn't love the pseudo-suede seats, but they do grip your clothes and keep you from sliding around, which was also marketed as a safety feature. And marketing is where Malcolm Bricklin truly excelled. As the St. John factory slowly began turning out cars, excitement reached a fever pitch. Pre-orders for the SV-1 were rolling in, and his visionary idea of a safe, good-looking car was coming true. Of course, innovation rarely goes smoothly. Despite high hopes for a low sticker price, as costs ballooned, the company had to keep raising the MSRP from $4,000 to almost $7,500. The acrylic body panels became a quality nightmare, with up to 60% of the early material being unusable on the cars.
You touch a very tender note. I wonder if anybody's asked you, and I know this would be very, very hard to prove, if, since you do, in a sense, pose a threat, a competitive threat, if you like, to other manufacturers, if they weren't behind or aren't behind in some subtle way inhibiting your success, the big three?
That's a really good question, and I might be naive. I feel that they have not gone out in a concerted effort to do me any harm. Yet I do feel they've done me harm in a different way, and that's known as arrogance. They are so arrogant that nobody else will ever build a car. We get no terms, we must pay cash in advance for any products we buy, and the cost of the things that we do buy from the big three are considerably higher than other people in larger, let's say, themselves would buy, including from the suppliers that supply them. And we don't usually have the choice of suppliers that they do, because very few of them will take us seriously. And although I don't think it's a conspiracy, it still has the same effect of costing us a tremendous amount of money to build an automobile.
Would you not have thought of that before you started? If I'd started out to buy a car and call it the Paul or whatever, I'd have thought, they'll never let me build it. I keep remembering things like the Tucker, the Henry J, other cars. Incidentally, they told me, the fellow that you saw earlier said that Tucker was a really first-rate car. Do you ever see one or have one?
I saw Tucker and I met his son. And he told me what the big three did to him. I really don't think that in today's laws and today, the way people think today, that we were subject to the same kinds of pressure that Tucker was.
There was some discussion, I think, at the end of the 50s, early 60s, on the part of the United States government, saying that if the big three, I think in General Motors' particular case, didn't appear to be open for competition, if you like, there would be some trust-busting activity or try to break up the company a little bit more. Is that so?
Yes, and I believe there are people who are active today trying to do that to the big three. I don't know whether that's good or bad. I do know that it would be a shame if people like myself and possibly a few others weren't able to offer other alternatives of automobiles to the public.
All of these problems were troublesome for a vehicle costing almost as much as a Lincoln Continental. Unfortunately, the company had to spend a boatload of money retooling for the 1975 models. which now used a less potent Ford Windsor V8. At 351 cubic inches, it made 175 horsepower and came with a 3-speed automatic only. Despite the loss of power, the engine in this car runs like a dream. It's hard to believe that underneath this stylish body are suspension parts from the humble AMC Hornet.
This is the kind of car that just begs you to drive faster. You see a twist in the road up ahead, but you don't want to slow down because it's just so much fun to push the limits in a curve. And it's all the more impressive when you think about the Bricklins' age, because it's not like there were a lot of American cars you could do this in back in 1975.
A great deal of the credit should go to this car's owner, who's worked tirelessly on every detail of this SV-1. It probably runs and drives better now than it did brand new. But even back in the day, a comparison test in Car and Driver magazine proved the Bricklin could almost keep pace with a similarly equipped Corvette. Not bad for a company's first car. I have to admit, there are faster cars, there are better handling cars, there are more collectible cars, and yes, there are even safer cars than the Bricklin. But driving the SV-1 surprised me. I didn't expect an emissions-era sports car with an automatic transmission to be this fun. This Bricklin is a genuine alternative to mainstream performance cars from the mid-70s. The Bricklin's agile, predictable handling could even be considered a safety feature, if it helps you avoid accidents before they happen. Provided, of course, you could afford an SV-1. By 1975, the price had risen to an excruciating $9,980, $3,000 over a Corvette, and well into Cadillac territory. Costs were out of control.
When I was in high school, in the 10th grade, I walked into my high school library, and there on a book rack was this magazine, Car and Driver, with the Bricklin having a comparison against the Corvette. And when I saw this, it just got me hooked. I took the magazine, I snuck it out of the high school library and to read it, and I've still got this magazine all these years later.
The editors were pleasantly surprised to find a worthy competitor to the Corvette, writing, "They come off amazingly close, these two American GT coupes. As long as you focus on the performance readout, they are practically identical." For about $10,000, the Bricklin came with a long list of standard features.
Rick Remdenok is a Bricklin authority. He owns several of these cars. He buys them and sells them. He works on them. He knows them inside and out.
Typical 70s muscle cars type stuff, a little rough, handles okay, nothing compared to the new cars of today, but as of the 70s, it was a pretty normal car.
Rick says the low production numbers make these vehicles very collectible.
Back in 75, 76, I bought one. And I drove it as my daily driver for a couple years, and it was the biggest piece of crap I ever owned. I said never again, and now I have 9 of them.
Rick owns 9 Bricklins.
Yeah, well, I belong to the Bricklin Club, but we have a little email ring, and the bankruptcy liquidator who purchased all the leftover parts and all the leftover cars at the time of the factory closing found some parts stuck in the back of one of their warehouses after they've been sitting for 20 years or 30 years, and I offered to buy them because I happened to be restoring 2 cars at the time. So I went down and bought a tractor trailer load of parts, and while I was there I said, "Oh, you want some cars?" And they had this and 2 other 76s sitting there brand new. This car had just under 400 miles on it when I bought it, and I said, sure, why not? So I bought this car and the parts, and now I have a whole bunch of cars.
To use Rick's words, he has too many Bricklins.
They're eventually all going to go, except for maybe 1 or 2. Just there's no sense having a car if you can't drive it.
I need another engine.
I still got to do everything I said. I fly into Livonia, where we had our offices, and I was meeting with Keith Crane. Keith was mad at me because I wouldn't let anybody come in and see what we were doing. And one of his reporters snuck into the garage that we were building prototypes with a camera, and my people took the camera and broke it. And he said, how can you not let Automotive News? I said, what the hell do I give a damn for Automotive News now? I said, I'm not showing anybody, this is before we had their showing, anybody about anything we're doing right now. And you guys ought to respect that. He said, no, we don't respect that. We're in the business of reporting. We need to get the information. And if you were smart, you'd cooperate with us because we can do you a lot of good. And he said, why is Hal Sperlich waiting in your waiting room? I said, who's Hal Sperlich? Got that? I didn't know who Hal Sperlich was. He said, he's Iacocca's right-hand man. Iacocca was at Ford. No kidding. Great. I don't know either, but I'll tell you, Keith, it was nice talking to you today. I probably will listen to you, but I got to go get Hal. Hal comes in. How are you? He said, Lee sent me to check out and see what you're doing. I said, be happy to show you anything you want. He said, it's a funny thing, too, I said to him. I've been thinking about giving you a call because we're building the car in Canada, and I understand the Windsor 351 is built in Windsor. He said, you're right. I said, you know, if we can work out a deal, I'll switch from American Motors to the Ford engine. Oh, he said, great. Go, and I show him the thing, and he meets everybody, he sees what we're doing, and he gets excited. What a cool thing. He said, okay, you got a deal. So we made a deal to buy the engine from Ford with 1,000 cars a month. Now, I'm feeling extremely happy and fortunate enough that Keith told me who was out there, because I would have never had the slightest idea. And we re-engineer everything, and it is now December, about near the end, right before Christmas season, and we're getting the first shipment in January, and we're going to start shipping cars. I'm in the LA airport with my wife and 3 kids, at the time only 3, and first wife, and we're on the way to Acapulco for a 2-week Christmas vacation. And I get a call from the office. We have a problem. Ford's not going to ship us engines. No, that can't be. It cannot possibly be. What in the world could they possibly imagine? Sperlich was too nice a guy. The negotiations were very pleasant. Something's wrong. So I call Hal Sperlich, no answer. Call Lee Iacocca, no answer. I call Henry Ford, I say no answer. Nobody's returning the call. I'm sitting in the VIP room at the LA airport waiting to go to Acapulco. I had just flown in from Scottsdale, where I was living at the time. And I start putting out my messages. Call me back in an hour, or you'll read about it in the paper. Hal calls me. What's wrong, Malcolm? What's wrong? I just got told I got no engines. Well, let me get back to you. I said, not too long, because either I'm going on a plane to Acapulco or I'm going on a plane to Washington. One of those 2 things, and I got to know before the plane gets here. I'll get back to you. Calls back, he said, I know the problem. It was a lawyer problem. They decided it was too much risk against what could the possible return be. You're going to buy them all? Big deal. We spill that many engines. I said, that's a no. And if you don't sell me, that's exactly what I'm going to tell them. They spill that many engines, but they wouldn't sell it to me after I spent the money for engineering, re-engineering the whole damn thing. He said, yeah, I know that's really tough. I said, please don't make me have to I don't want to be into how do I mess and rile up everybody, because I don't believe what I'm about to tell them is true. I think it's exactly what you told me. He said, I'll get right back to you. Got back, he said, Lee says, no problem, you got the engine. And I went off to Acapulco.
4 was a 4-speed, because we had to have an EPA car that we could drive 4,000 miles under them driving it, under their supervision. That was called a tag test, because you can't change an inline driven part without another EPA test. Now, if you've got a new vehicle, it's 50,000 miles, no hiccups. It hiccups, the whole thing is null and void and throw it away. Those tests 40 years ago were our cost $2 and 25 cents per driven mile. So this is not something you do without paying a whole lot of attention.
So we're getting what kind of body they want. They want me to do steel. I don't want to do steel. Then they go fiberglass. I don't want to do fiberglass. It runs. I had a couple Corvettes. So I'm looking around, and I get to Roman Haas, who builds acrylic sheets. And they use these acrylic sheets, which are solid color, in bathtubs, in bathrooms. Put it on the wall. Boom, you got a new wall. Okay. Tell me about it. Well, if you get a scratch, you just buff it out. If you're running for a car, you reinforce it with fiberglass. You can't make a dent. If you hit it hard enough to make a dent, you make a hole. And you can put the hole right back in. Put glue on, buff it, you got your body back. No kidding. By the way, at 35 mile an hour crashes, it goes into the wall, the fenders crack and go off. I can put the fenders back, glue them in the back. All right. So now, okay, acrylic reinforced with fiberglass. Oh, isn't that great? Now they got to make molds and they got to figure in just a million different things. I had no idea. And we're doing it. And I'm now learning about the car business. Painfully, another million. But and I'm talking little millions. I'm not talking billions like they talk now. And then I got to get a motor from somebody, an engine, safety regulations. You can't build engines anymore. And not then, because you had to meet all the safety things. They were just out of the question. The amount of money you needed to build to create an engine and the transmission and meet all the regulations was too much serious money. So I had to buy it from somebody. So we got an American Motors 360, 4-barrel, nice engine. We got a contract from them, $1,000 a month. We put it in. We had to meet a 50,000 mile test, which is a royal pain in the ass. We met the 50,000 mile test. Now we don't have bumpers. The 25 miles is out. I'm finally convinced that's way too much stuff. I'll have to have a bumper about this big to go in that much and then come out that much. Oh my God. It will look like you be stupid. I mean, just nothing good. So I find, okay, great. But we still don't have, what are we going to do to have this happen? We're going to build the body around the bumper so it can go in and out without hurting the body. I'm flying into LA one day, and as we land, it hits me. What did we just do? We just landed a plane. The wheels went in and out. That's what I want. I get off the plane, get in the taxi, go to the company that makes the wheel mechanism to close, that keeps the wheels going back and forth when you land. And I tell them what I want to do. Yeah. So I say, here's what I want to do. Here's what the car is going to weigh. I run 10 mile an hour bumpers. Can you get them for me? They said, of course. They ended up making me 2 little units for the front and 2 units for the back. Each one cost me $1.50. I have 10 mile an hour bumpers. Now, that would not make General Motors or Ford or Chrysler happy, because for their lousy $1.50, they just lost a couple $1,000s worth. Now the bumper was sturdier than a normal bumper, and it cost more money. So I'm exaggerating on how low it cost, but it didn't cost very much. Now I have a body that won't dent. I have an exterior that will look the same. I told them 40 years from now, it's 47 years to look exactly the same. All you have to do is buff them. And if you want, you can paint them. It doesn't matter. Now we have to build a dozen of them to send them around the country to find out what happens in the mountains and what happens in the hot and what happens in the cold. Let's find out what the hell happens with our wonderful vehicles. Oh, the first thing is nobody will give me the door I want. I got a gull wing. I insist on a glass that goes up and down. By the way, no gull wing door ever made has a window that goes up and down, because the physics of it, when it's out, when it's down, and when it's up, is so dramatically different that what you need is whatever. And my guys refused to find a solution. They wanted to talk me out of the glass, and they wanted to talk me out of a push button. Wanted to go by hand, and I refused. I remember now we're a month and a half from production. No, excuse me. Yeah, a month and a half from production. I'll tell you about the engine in a minute. Month and a half from production. I don't have the doors I want. The reason I built the car, I can't have the doors. And at that time, there wasn't computers designing the car. I had 200 engineers sitting in Livonia drawing the engineering for a year. And I'm walking out to the car to go to the airport, and I'm really frustrated. And a kid comes running after me that works inside. He said, Mr. Bricklin, he said, I can get you what you want. I said, hey, really? What is it? He said, you take the hydraulic cylinder from the convertible that takes the convertible up and down, and you put it on the B pillar. And you push a button, it'll open. You push a button, it'll close. No kidding. Why don't you tell them? He said, oh, I told them. He said, they're not interested in doing it. And in fact, if you do it, when you leave, I'm getting fired. Oh, really? Come here with me, kid. I walk in, I call everybody in. I said, this gentleman just told me a very interesting solution. And I have to tell you, I'm excited. I know it'll work. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave. I'll be back next week. If it's on the car and working, we're in production. If it's not on the car and working, I'm closing the place. We're not building the car. And if anybody messes with the kid, they're getting fired. Came back a week later, you pushed a button and it worked. All right. And I'll tell you the end story with that. But now I got the doors that work. And I have, because it's hydraulic, enough for the glass to be either way. I got no more problem. Everything is solved. Things are ready to go. And I'm looking at the car and it starts to rain. But not a normal rain, one of those fast rains that comes pouring down. So I run out to shut the doors. Now remember, they're hydraulic. If you have the hydraulic go too fast, you maybe cut your hand off if you don't do something smart. So I push the button and it takes 6 seconds for the door to close. Did you ever stand in the rain for 6 seconds? All right, now, but first I got to jump in, and now I'm inside and I'm closing in. It's raining in on me. So it means in the rain, normally I have to wait 6 seconds for it to open, jump in, and 6 seconds. Oh my God. This is the most horrible. This is the next worst thing to the bodies coming apart. But I got cars out. They're out there. They're already delivered, and I'm building more. Oh my God, what am I going? I remember it was hard as hell to get this solution. What am I going to do? I got to change it. This is not acceptable. So I called my friend Frank Turner in Graham, Texas, who he's no longer alive, a great inventor, not a good inventor, a great inventor. And I said, Frank, I got a problem flying to Detroit. Somebody will pick you up and you got to solve the problem for me. So he comes in, I show him the door, and I said, I need the door to go boom, and I need the door to come down and stop, and then comes close slowly so it doesn't cut off anybody's fingers. And I got to do it so I can put it into the car that I got right now. I said, okay, no problem. I'll be back in a week. I said, give me a car. So I give him a car and he drives to Graham, Texas. The end of the week, he calls me, I'm there, come on in. So I fly in. Everybody walks out to the car. He pushes a button, it goes whoop. He pushes another button, it goes whoop, stops 6 inches above and closes. This is fantastic. What do I have to change? Nothing. He said, I took the hydraulic fluid out of the hydraulic lift and put in air. And you have a box frame. Your engine makes air and it pumps it into the box frame. That's it. We didn't get one of the cars in production on because we got closed down before we could do it. But 90% of the cars on the road today have that in because some people who left the factory to go be in their business of fixing Bricklins put them on all the cars that come walking in. They want to be fixed. And it's fabulous. Not good. That boom, boom. That's simple.
And of course, it was a learning curve. Now, I'll tell you a funny story about how important testing is and how the most amazing things that you could never imagine can happen. So we had cars, I was listening to Detroit Now, tell me what to do. And we had cars all over the country being driven. In the heat, in the cold, in the snow, in the mountains, everywhere we could. And one day I get a call from a man who had been driving the car in the Phoenix area in the summertime. And he said, Mr. Bricklin? I said, yeah. He said, we have a very serious problem. Now, what could possibly be a serious problem? The problem is, he says, we're out in 115 degrees in the daytime, and we're taking it inside in air conditioning in nighttime, and the body is now on the floor. I said, what are you talking about? He said, the acrylic has come off of the fiberglass. Now the car is a fiberglass car, and the acrylic is on the floor. I said, what are you talking? How could that be? They said, because when you put the two together, you don't bond them, you glue them. And they each change at different temperatures, different degree, and they pop off. So you need, this is the first one that happened, by the way, and we're going to be in production in like 30 days. And that's all I needed. As bodies come falling on the floor, can you imagine? That would have lasted, I would have been in business in another minute. So I said, well, no, that's no problem. We just need a glue that will bond, that will go inside each.
So when it moves the glue, it doesn't separate. So they said, no problem. They called Corning and for fiberglass, and they said, well, we don't know anything about acrylic. And we called Roman Haas, and they said, well, we don't know anything about fiberglass. So I said, are you telling me neither one of you have what I need? No. We haven't the slightest idea. So I turned to my own people and I said, you got 2 weeks to invent a bond. I don't care what you do. If you don't, I got to close the doors. I can't have acrylic on the floor. And they did. And nobody ever came off again. Cool. And our people designed it, our people did it. And today, 45 years later, those cars look exactly like they came off the factory floor. All you have to do is buff it, boom, and they look great.
Ça colle pas. Ça colle pas. De l'acrylique et du fibre de verre, c'est comme libéraux, conservateurs. Colle pas. Français, anglais. Colle pas. Vos projections puis nos réalités. Colle pas. De l'acrylique puis du fibre de verre, ça colle pas, Albert. Là, Hutchison, là, il sait plus quoi faire à Minto. Ça fait 2 fois que vous, non, pas que vous, que toi, tu changes d'acrylique. Parlant de plastique, là, le dernier, il fondait à 159 degrés Fahrenheit. Tu sais-tu combien il peut faire en Arizona l'été? 180. Fait que ton char, là, il va fondre puis il va coller sur le pavé. Ça, c'est si on arrive à en produire un seul.
Il n'y a pas un cœur de fête encore?
So far, il y a plus de chèques qui sortent de l'usine qu'il y a de cœur. Puis la seule porte que vous avez réussi à faire fonctionner comme de l'allure, c'est ta porte à toi, Calice. Ça fait qu'arrête de signer des chèques, puis check les signes. Parce que moi, les signes, ils me disent que ça va mal. Calme-toi, là. Je suis très calme, Albert. C'est quoi ton nom?
C'est Billy.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais dans la vie, Billy?
Je suis un pipe fitter.
Quel âge que t'as, mon Billy?
J'ai 24.
Tu crois-tu que t'es capable de faire ce job ici?
Ben, j'ai tout le temps été bon avec mes mains.
Ça colle pas!
Qu'est-ce qui se passe avec Hennessy?
Qu'est-ce qu'elle bat si c'est anyway?
See that car? That's me. What's your name, kid?
Billy.
Well, Billy, you're hired. Now you go build that car.
Et aller à Détroit pour faire une pétition avec Hutchison pour clairer mon père sans même m'en parler.
T'en parler? T'es pas parlable! T'es jamais ici! Puis quand je te dis que ton Space Age, ça marche pas, tu m'écoutes pas!
J'ai même entendu parler qu'il y avait du monde qui voulait me clairer moi. Moi, Jack. Malcolm Griffin.
T'essaies de réinventer la roue! Ah, comme... Puis elle est pas ronde, elle est carrée comme ta tête! Bonne chance, les boys!
Ouais, ça chauffe aujourd'hui.
Bringing parts in and then chasing the cars around the loop, and then getting to what was called the garage area, which was generally only used in a car factory to put some finishing touches if necessary. But what was happening was we were virtually building the car by hand in the garage and ignoring the fact that it was going around the loop. And at that time we had about 8 or 10 tough guys from the St. John Motorcycle Association, sometimes known as a gang, and they really were a fine bunch. When Jack Hennessy joined us from Ontario, he was a very, very experienced automotive executive, and he had worked for Ford, I believe, and he looked into the management structure and the way things got done or didn't get done, and he was horrified when he found that there was no reporting structure. He found out that there were so many conflicts between executives, officers, directors, that the people that were there to make things happen and build cars didn't know if they were on their rear end or their elbows. So he sat down with Malcolm and he sat down with Albert, and he said, neither of you gentlemen could organize a drunk in a brewery, to be polite. And I don't think they accepted his opinion, but when I'd heard an experienced man like Hennessy say what he said, then I thought, well, you know, this is not working with these guys in charge, and it never will work as long as they are in charge. And I think it's about time I got out, because I'm not going to be able to remove them. The only people that can remove these guys are the government of New Brunswick. And so I decided to leave, and I had already been offered a job in Fredericton. And that was the end.
Il y avait plein de rumeurs, mais nous, on n'était pas derrière les portes. Et John Turnbull, lui, il était de Saint-Jean et connaissait probablement toutes les difficultés techniques qui se sont présentées à la Bricklin au fur et à mesure que ça s'est produit, et les difficultés aussi de personnel, parce que c'était le père de Malcolm Bricklin qui, à un moment donné, faisait des problèmes. Bon, alors John Turnbull, lui, il était le critique de l'opposition, il connaissait probablement ça plus que nous, mais il reste que c'était quelqu'un de l'opposition qui était payé pour être critique. Le débat politique, je crois qu'a voulu nous maintenir l'opposition. Je pense qu'il a souffert de trop de rumeurs parallèles qui circulaient ou qui couraient sur le fait qu'un premier ministre d'une province s'était laissé séduire par un playboy américain qui est venu lui vendre une idée farfelue.
Hey, on a quelque chose ici. Des chiffres.
The result is dramatic losses. The first cars off the line cost $16,000 apiece, but are selling for just $5,000. And while New Brunswickers are awed by the look of the car, they don't realize that it is an engineering nightmare, riddled with faults. By the fall of 1974, Bricklin Canada has spent $15.4 million testing and designing the car, and produced just 100 vehicles. Once again, the company is on the edge of bankruptcy, but only Malcolm Bricklin and Richard Hatfield know this. Both are desperate for some good news. What they get instead is the Bricklin election.
We got close. I had great admiration for the man. I considered him one of the real good international politicians. Smart, independent, not hooked up with anybody. I mean, just paid attention to doing the job. And we'd be on TV shows everywhere, so he was getting what he wanted. Then at the height of his popularity, he comes into the office and he says, I need 3 Bricklins. Sure. What do you want it for? He said, I'm calling an election. He said, the first car is going to come get the crowds. Second car is coming with my mother in it. Third car is coming with me. And he did. And of course, it was reported all over Canada.
Look around. St. John is no longer stalled in the threshold. We're on the move. Let's keep things rolling with the Hatfield government.
In October, Richard Hatfield calls a general election. But rather than run from the Bricklin, he makes it a central plank of his campaign. And New Brunswickers eat it up.
Même s'il ne pouvait pas parler pendant la dernière semaine de campagne électorale, il n'y a pas besoin de parler, il y avait son œuvre devant lui. Je parle par mes œuvres et pas par ma voix.
Because the truth of the matter is, what I have found is the only thing that makes any sense is to dream. To not dream is to die.
Je l'ai, le produit, j'ai la preuve que ça marche. Je l'ai. Il a gagné ces élections.
I love this car!
Ce que Hatfield a fait avec la Bricklin pendant la campagne électorale, il l'a misé, puis on a fait un capital politique qui lui a amené la victoire. Bon, c'est pas le seul facteur, mais c'est un facteur important parce que c'était un symbole de succès.
Oh, they loved it. They loved it, and who wouldn't have?
it looked great. The New Brunswickers at the time were not aware of the fact that the car had been engineered after Bricklin arrived. They weren't aware that the production process was a shambles, that it never really came together. But the prototype of the car and then the first cars off the assembly line looked great. They were sexy cars, and New Brunswick craved that, something that in fact they were producing that in fact was that sexy.
And the night of the election, he won with the largest landslide ever recorded in that part of Canada. The front page of all the papers had a Bricklin with the doors up and him flying out of the top with the Superman uniform on, and headlines, Premier wins the Bricklin election. I'm like, Dan. I got this place knocked. Whatever I want, I'm going to get. And that's the way it seemed to work out. Things are going along. We're starting to do the quality problems. We have back orders that could take us 5 years to ever supply. And as soon as people are loving the car, not some of the quality problems that we're fixing.
For the Liberal opposition, led by Robert Higgins, it's a disaster. Even though they know the project has serious problems, nothing they throw at the Bricklin or at Richard Hatfield ever sticks. But Malcolm Bricklin knows the Liberals will shut him down if they win. But with the Premier's election hopes literally riding on the car, Bricklin realizes that Hatfield is vulnerable and demands more money, and the Premier gives it to him in secret. In early November, $1.5 million is funneled to Bricklin, Canada. Rent on the St. John plant hasn't been paid for 16 months, and Bricklin is about to be evicted. 2 days later, another $1 million payment is authorized.
It was a secret infusion. If not, the Bricklin would have failed during the election campaign. And the prize of winning the election was great enough that Richard Hatfield and his Conservatives were willing to deceive the public that much.
For Hatfield, banking on the Bricklin pays off as his Conservative Party is re-elected. But the secret loans turn out to be a mistake. When the payments are made public after the election, popular opinion begins to turn against the project.
There was a shift in mood, and I think it was just by virtue of the fact that people could see the amount of money the province of New Brunswick was having to pump in, and virtually the production of the car was not producing the revenue stream to, in fact, bring the plant up to its optimum level. There were no other substantial investors. The province of New Brunswick was it.
Hatfield and Bricklin do the only thing they can, ride it out. By this point, they have no other choice.
He tied himself to the car, and the car tied himself to him. And we were together. And we were stuck together for both good and bad. And unfortunately, it was to the bad.
Automotively speaking, $1 million will...
Dans l'industrie automobile, on dépense $1 million en 2 heures. C'est extrêmement dispendieux de construire une voiture. Et les gens ne comprennent pas ça.
And people don't understand that. Actually, the financial planning volume, that's called FPV.
On prévoyait produire 10 voitures à l'heure, donc 80 par jour, sur un quart de travail de 8 heures.
And it was absolutely impossible.
C'était impossible de faire 10 voitures par heure, notamment en raison des problèmes à l'usine de Minto. On était chanceux si on en faisait 5. Dans les faits, c'était plutôt 4.
When we got down to the bottom line,
en bout de ligne, on pouvait se retrouver avec 2 voitures par heure. Ça en faisait 16 par jour. Peu importe, on était loin des 1000 voitures par mois.
That doesn't compute to 1,000 cars a month.
C'était un chiffre ridicule, vraiment.
It was a ridiculous number. It really was.
Despite the secret loan scandal, the new year of 1975 starts with a new loan, $8.5 million in financing for the Bricklin. But for the first time, support for the car is slipping. In the legislature, the Liberal opposition goes on the attack, their campaign fueled by a series of high-level leaks.
And I remember getting a brown envelope with more or less a rough sketch at how much money had been paid out and what had really gone into the car itself and so on, and what really was needed, and contacting the sender and the sender really, sounding the alarm, saying, look, we all believed in it at first, but it's got out of hand and it's just not going to work.
Oh, the Bricklin, oh, the Bricklin, is it just another Edsel? Wait and see.
As more liberal revelations make it into public, the Bricklin becomes the local equivalent of a Newfie joke. And a song by New Brunswicker Charlie Russell goes to number 17 on the Canadian charts.
Now there's this fella Malcolm, he comes from the USA. He was playing with his geometric instruments one day. His friends said what he drew was just a little bit absurd. They wondered, why would anyone put wheels upon a bird? He said, I'll go up to Canada. I'm sure they'll buy my car. The Quebecers sent them down to us, so that shows how smart they are. Now the Premier, he's not married. He's a sporty kind of guy. So this flashy vehicle for sports caught Dickie in the eye. Oh, the Bricklin, oh, the Bricklin, here's just another Edsel, wait and see. I will let the Yankees try it and hope to God they'll buy it. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Now don't get me wrong, cause this Bricklin thing could just work out all right. Until that time, our Dickie will be just a bit uptight. He blames it on the liberals, that Turnbull's such a pest. What he can't blame on Big Bad John, he blames that on the press. Big auto factories everywhere are shutting down, no sales. Investment in the Bricklin in New Brunswick still prevails. How much did you give, Malcolm? Please answer if you would. Oh, ye of little faith believe, because my word is good. Oh, the Bricklin, oh, the Bricklin, here's just another Edsel, wait and see. Lord, Mr. Ford, we'll let the Yankees try it and hope to God they'll buy it. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Well, the Rolls was called up yonder, and the Edsel was called up yonder. Will the Bricklin be called up yonder? Don't let it be, dear Lord, don't let it be. Don't let it be, dear Lord, don't let it be.
It's time for Let's Make a Deal, starring TV's big dealer, Auntie Hall.
Thank you very much and welcome to Let's Make a Deal. Are you ready to deal? Then stand. Sharon Abbott, I have a deal for you that is fantastic, and I don't think it can be beat, because it's right back of that curtain, and this is what you may own in the next few months. It is America's newest sports car.
And that's the Bricklin, with safety as the most important design factor, dramatic styling, luxurious interior, and the unique gull-wing doors for both safety and convenience. Bricklin, the car of tomorrow, today. From Bricklin Vehicle Corporation, that retails for $7,695, and we're adding tax and license for a total of $8,920.70.
That automobile, which is the latest, newest sports car on the market, worth $9,000 the way we're going to give it to you, if you win it, would put you in very exclusive company, because there are no more than 500 people in the world that own one of those. And it may be 501 in just a few seconds. And all you have to do is put things in order. And what we're going to ask you to do is take a look at the 5 items right here on the tray. Jay will describe them, and then you are going to price them for us from the least expensive up to the most expensive in perfect order. If you can do that correctly, the $9,000 sports car is yours. Can you beat that?
Another far-out idea was renting 3 Bricklins to the Scottsdale Police Department for $1 a year. The cars were for promotional purposes and not practical when it came to pursuing criminals, as the gull-wing doors were slow to open.
One of this year's highlights, an original Bricklin police car
used by Scottsdale PD in the 70s, that has been fully restored.
But basically, it's a stock 74 Bricklin. It's just been equipped with the proper equipment to basically be what it was back in, what it looked like in 75.
The Chairman car was a make-work project for the Bricklin development team in Livonia and Scottsdale, contrary to the government of New Brunswick's wishes. The Chairman was to be double the price of the regular Bricklin, with black and gold theme. It included a new black interior, gold rims, gold racing stripes, a gold tool set, a larger engine, and a gold lame jumpsuit. The purchaser would also be flown to St. John to watch their car being built. The car never reached production due to uncontrollable circumstances.
But the public lampooning of the project is just part of a larger crisis. Complaints are now flooding in from dealers across the United States. Many of the Bricklin's engineering problems have not been solved.
Well, the first and most important major problem with the car was the doors. We did not have a system that worked like this. We had a system that took 8 seconds, produced 1,500 pounds of energy, would bend and destroy the doors, which exacerbated the acrylic problem, which meant that we were cracking acrylic. We discovered we couldn't fix acrylic. Most fun when you have a whole car with no way to fix any damage. We had in '74 a suspension problem. They forgot to get the right springs. So the springs allowed the car to be too low and it bottomed. Very hard on the people riding in the car. Then we have a car with no provisions for a spare. No place to put it because it wasn't designed with a spare. We had an interesting situation in our hatches, still there on all the cars built because we can't get the water out. So where's the water go? It goes inside. The hatch seal was of a durometer. It was so soft the glass would fall in when it got hot. The console, interior-wise, was so weak that if you leaned on it, it would break. The most important thing is the buttons were far aft that you couldn't operate the doors except with your elbow.
In an attempt to save his own reputation, Bricklin and his American team blame the problems on the New Brunswick workers.
Now, if you have a work ethic, which is hunting moose, shooting salmon, etc., digging coal, cutting trees down, it's not a bad work ethic, but it is distinctly different. Americans go to the doctor when they can't go to work. They work until they drop. They haven't got a lick of sense. Europeans and Canadians, especially New Brunswickers, go to work when they have to. And they don't go because they want to.
With unemployment at record levels, workers in Atlantic Canada have a special deal. It's called 1042. Work for 10 weeks and you can claim unemployment insurance for up to 42. Bricklin workers find the scheme irresistible.
We're building the car. We're building it with people who never built a car before. So we're talking about people who are into fishing and cutting lumber. But it was just not a very complicated thing that we were doing. And they were eager, and we were paying really good wages. So they were really happy. There was a small problem that if you worked 3 or 4 months in Canada at the time, you could get a year unemployment. So every 3 or 4 months, we'd have 80% turnover. Good way to build a car. All right? So I went to the UAW in Toronto and asked them to unionize me, hoping and telling them why. I need a discipline that these people understand it's better to get when I'm paying them than go after this unemployment because they're not going to be able to come back. Why would you throw this opportunity to make a living for not ever, but for a long time, compared to getting paid 3 months and then getting whatever they give you? So they came in. It didn't help us, by the way, but anyhow, they came in. Now, I got very close to the premier. He was giving us money to bring us there because of the attention the province would get, because nobody heard about New Brunswick.
When Bricklin's criticism reaches the premier, Hatfield sees it as a cheap shot. For the first time, a rift opens between the two men, a rift that will never close.
Malcolm Bricklin's comments about the workforce are, I think, unfair, and I personally resent them. For example, in St. John, New Brunswick, there's always been a very stable workforce. Shipbuilding has been a success. The Irvings are one of the leading industrialists in the world, and they've built their ships and built their oil plants on New Brunswick workforce.
Avant de travailler à la Bricklin, je travaillais dans des usines à poissons à Chupagan. Puis là, après ça, j'ai attendu dire qu'ils engageaient à Saint-Jean. Fait tout de suite, moi, j'étais partante. Je voulais y aller, je voulais découvrir quelque chose de nouveau.
Alice Roussel vient de la péninsule acadienne. Elle n'a aucune expérience dans le domaine.
On va là, à la bâtisse, puis ils embauchaient tout de suite. Puis moi, je plaçais les réservoirs d'essence. Mais il y avait beaucoup... On n'était pas toutes seules, Saint-Charles. On était plusieurs, puis il y avait tout le temps quelqu'un qui disait « Tu fais ça comme ci, tu fais ça comme ça. » C'était bien facile.
Son frère, Ulysse Brideau, déniche lui aussi un travail. Il n'a que 17 ans.
Puis ça, je m'en rappelle, parce que c'était pas loin de ce que je me trouvais, ce que tu faisais tourner les taillots pour voir. Puis je coupais pour faire placer les windshields.
Je me rappellerai toujours, il y avait un monsieur qui travaillait dans l'électricité de la voiture. Et puis lui avait son expérience, je crois que c'était à l'usine de Oshawa en Ontario. Puis il dit, j'aurais jamais pensé qu'on pourrait manufacturer une automobile ici.
L'idée était d'y aller là pour travailler pour le reste de notre vie.
Oui, j'étais le 6e employé dans la manufacture. Et puis, j'étais un des derniers à travailler là aussi. C'était toute une entreprise. On a mis beaucoup d'heures et beaucoup de travail. On lit aujourd'hui de certaines fautes qui allusent à l'assemblage, à la main-d'œuvre. Mais il y a beaucoup de ces fautes-là que c'était des fautes de production, pré-production, et puis qu'il y avait vraiment un manque d'argent dans le design original du véhicule.
On a dû faire des ajustements et le travail de finition était difficile. Les opérations, l'ingénierie et les installations ont été améliorées. On avait plus d'outils aussi. Les dernières voitures à sortir de la chaîne étaient franchement meilleures.
He did not compromise safety. We may have had a little short of money in the build of the car, but the bottom line was everybody in every job in Bricklin knew that we don't lose the safety. We always kept our mind focused on that.
40 years later, the car is still one of the safest cars on the road. Equip it with airbags and it would represent where car safety should be 40 years later.
We've had our cars.
Une de nos voitures a percuté un pont de béton à 65 000 à l'heure. Mike Brace, le chauffeur, a non seulement survécu, mais il s'en est sorti indemne. Incroyable.
Amazing.
Serge, le pack de l'automobile à l'époque regroupait les 3 constructeurs américains Ford, Chrysler et GM. Bricklin en faisait pas partie pouvait fabriquer ses voitures au Canada, mais ne pouvait pas les vendre au Canada. Ça, c'est assez particulier.
Ce pays ne va pas accepter l'idée de construire un hot rod pour les Américains. As-tu idée du coût que ça peut représenter pour les contribuables? On vit une crise d'énergie. Ottawa va investir dans votre centrale nucléaire parce qu'il y a de l'avenir dans l'énergie nucléaire.
L'avenir. L'avenir. Dis ça aux jeunes qui s'en vont travailler dans l'Ouest.
Richard.
Pierre, où est-ce que ton sens de vision, ton panache? Les jeunes veulent un rêve. Ils veulent croire en quelque chose. Avoir une raison de vivre.
Avoir une raison de vivre. Un char.
So, as a kid, did you like cars? Did you have a lot of dinky cars, or?
I like cars, but not the way most people would assume I like cars. I'm not a car fanatic, but I like beautiful cars, and I like to do things that people say are impossible to do, when in fact I don't think they're impossible to do.
Avec le Silver Ghost, on avait réussi à l'ouvrir.
Le Silver Ghost, c'est pas le... Arrête de rêver, là.
What you have to do is make sure that you don't take on any more weight than the dream requires.
Tu peux pas faire ça avec 90 livres de poids.
The first lesson is don't ever build a car. Change your dream if you want an easy life.
Puis toi, tu voudrais que j'aille voir les Big Boys de Toronto, puis que je leur demande de partager le marché automobile avec vous autres. L'autopack avec les pêcheurs du Nouveau-Brunswick, parce qu'eux, ils se cherchent une raison de vivre. Veux-tu que je te dise quelque chose, moi? La vérité, c'est que tu t'es fait séduire par un vendeur de chars.
And what happened was, I needed hard tooling. I told you about hard tooling and how expensive it is. I had a project in for $10 million that I wrote in June of 1975, along with Dave Niles and my guys. We wanted to change the roof line, to make a curve, and to do some stylistic stuff, but mostly it was assembly stuff, to try to make the car better to build. And the irony of that was that when we got to that point, we had to get approval from the Canadian government because they owned 67% of what we were doing. Now that made it a little harder to get people to listen because you had nobody in there that had ever been in a car company. Nobody. They all sit around the table having what I call tea and crumpets. But nobody made any decisions. So what happened was that the project finally got to them September 2nd, I think, 75. In the infinite wisdom, that's when we closed the plant.
In late summer, fed up with faulty cars, hundreds of dealers refuse to buy anymore. Bricklin immediately lays off 250 workers, and Richard Hatfield orders an audit of Bricklin Canada by Clarkson Gordon. Meanwhile, Malcolm Bricklin tells Hatfield he needs another $10 million. But for the first time, the Premier says no. He wants to wait for the audit. A few days later, it arrives on his Fredericton desk.
The Clarkson Gordon report came back after interviewing all the personnel, showing that the losses for Bricklin Canada were at least 16 million and probably understated, another 6 to 7 million for the American companies and probably understated. There would be continuing losses of operation for the next year based on the best projections they could make, and that Bricklin could not continue to operate without at least another $10 million in advances in loans.
And then on the Wednesday, which is the date that the cabinet usually meets in New Brunswick, met and made a decision based on the report that they would not put any more capital into it.
That same day, Malcolm Bricklin is meeting with his board of directors at the Holiday Inn in St. John. He too has the Clarkson Gordon report.
We sat down to see what chances we had to go forward,
And I think we all decided there was nothing we could do about the labor, and there was nothing we could do about the political situation, so it didn't matter how much money went in there, nothing was going to change anything.
What happened was that we owed $8 million to the suppliers, who of course put us on COD cash. So the $10 million deal, which we needed, which would take 2 years to spend, had now grown to a $14.5 million deal. Whoops, we got $8 more million. Oh my goodness, where are we going to get that $8 million? We can't come up with it. It's not politically expedient to put any more money in Bricklin because Trudell is pissed off.
One day, the premier comes walking in the door. Malcolm, I got to see you alone. Now, understand, we had gotten close, really liked each other, go out to dinner, even went to Acapulco on a vacation with my kids together. He said, I'm closing it down. Now, they have $25 million invested, which is a lot of money back then. They know we have back orders up the kazoo. He's getting all the publicity. He just won an election with that in 3 months beforehand. This has got to be a joke, which I said, I'm really not going to take you seriously, but why even make a joke? He said, it's not a joke. He said, let me tell you why. He said, I've given it a lot of thought, you can imagine. He said, we won the election, and it was a great landslide, and every day of my life since, when I want to go talk to the press about anything, they have 2 questions. How's Malcolm and how's the car? They don't want to hear anything else. And it's never going to ever stop. I figure I stop and get rid of this thing, I wait another year, I call another election, and then I own it, not you. I said, are you serious? He said, yeah. And we went bankrupt. And a year later, he called another election, and he won. That was the end of that story. And I got to lose lots of money, almost all my Subaru stock. He was popular because of the car. Well, in Canada, you have 2 parties, and if you're not in one, if you're in this one, you hate the people over here. I mean, it's worse than anything over here. I mean, blah. So there were people who wouldn't go to work at the factory because their father came from another party. So that happened, but that wasn't a serious problem. The big problem was exactly what I told you. Everybody knew it. It wasn't it wasn't a secret thing, but for some reason, it never got written about like that. They talked about we didn't have sales. We had more sales and we knew what to do with it. They were getting so much money over a list, it was embarrassing.
That afternoon, as soon as the cabinet meeting ends, Richard Hatfield gets on a government helicopter and heads for St. John and the Bricklin meeting.
And landed outside the city, of course, with a car waiting for them, and went directly to the Holiday Inn, believing that they would avoid the press until after the meeting. When they arrived at the Holiday Inn, the press were already in the yard, and in order to get to the conference room on the lower level, they decided they would come down the back stairs and go through the kitchen. But unfortunately, the press were way ahead of them. They were waiting for them in the kitchen with microphones ready. And all that Hatfield could do was mumble and refuse to comment.
We sat down, and we were all realistic, and we were all sorry, but we all saw no other choice. And that was it.
Do you remember, did Hatfield say anything in particular, given he'd been so involved in the project?
You could tell he was extremely disappointed, but so was I. And he was, I think he felt really bad for us, for what we had to go through, and for himself, and what he had to go through. And he seemed to be extremely sad because he saw so close to being able to accomplish what he wanted to accomplish for the province being thrown away. And politically, he had no other choice.
As Malcolm Bricklin and Richard Hatfield emerge from the meeting, it's clear to everyone the Bricklin project is over.
All those who were present in the meeting came down to the main entrance of the hotel and shook hands for the press. And Malcolm Bricklin walked off to unlock his car, drive away, And as he walked to the car, he said to one of the press people who was standing there, "Well, that's too bad about New Brunswick. I guess I'll go to Ottawa and make Trudeau look good."
With the receivership of Bricklin Canada, the entire Bricklin organization collapses. While 200 employees demand that the plants reopen, Malcolm Bricklin applies for personal bankruptcy.
Il y a eu beaucoup d'émotions lorsque ça l'a fermé. On fermait une partie, un investissement qu'on croyait qu'on allait réussir. Parfois, je dois vous dire, ça me trottait dans la tête. Si ce projet-là serait au centre du pays, comme disent certains, bien, peut-être ça réussirait.
J'ai même vu des hommes pleurer quand ils ont vu ça fermer. C'est ça, je dis, c'était dur. Peut-être pas pour moi, parce que j'étais peut-être trop jeune pour comprendre, mais il y en avait qui étaient là qui avaient 35-40 ans.
There were 314 cars. Well, it's in the office then, because I ran that one. And they were sitting there like little soldiers. We laid everybody off and locked the gates. Now, the wisdom of that was for the Canadian board to review the circumstances. The insanity of that was that $4.532 million of letters of credit were waiting on the cars to be shipped. So we had $4.5 million in sales. I just talked to a guy last week. His dad had cars sold and never got the cars. Never got the cars. It wasn't a problem with production. We had 300 cars sitting there. It was a problem we weren't shipping the 300 cars. I don't understand exactly how that all worked. But then you have to call the suppliers. The people have trucks coming up with parts, right? And say, whoops, can't deliver your parts because the door's closed. So now what do? Then the suppliers suggest we would like to get paid. Who's the baddest dude on the street? You know, and that was me. I turned the lights off. Everybody was gone but me. Now that may be just tenacity. I just refused to quit.
Well, you turned the lights off in the St. John plant.
I sure did.
And with that, the Bricklin SV-1 was no more. In late 1975, the company went into receivership. A handful of 76 models were assembled from the remaining parts, making total estimated production just under 3,000 cars. In a bitter twist of fate, even head designer Herb Grasse had his company cars repossessed by the bank.
The First Pennsylvania Bank immediately takes control of Bricklin's U.S. and Canadian assets. In St. John, the plant is stripped and everything is sold. Bricklin Canada has been in production for just 1 year and produced only 2,880 cars. Despite their $23 million investment, 4% of their total budget, New Brunswick is left with nothing. For Malcolm Bricklin, it's the end of a dream. For Richard Hatfield, it's the end of a car and everything it symbolizes. For New Brunswickers, the demise of Bricklin Canada is both a massive embarrassment and a costly mistake.
All all in all, it was a sting. It was a sting that New Brunswickers were left holding, paying the bills.
Hatfield got conned in the sense that they didn't know what it was going to take to put this car together. They didn't know what it was going to take to build a production line in St. John that would actually manufacture the cars to produce the cash flow to make this a viable operation.
Yet despite the fiasco, New Brunswickers quickly forgive their premier because they too feel the Bricklin was worth the risk.
New Brunswickers really regret that it didn't happen, that they didn't churn out thousands of these things and put themselves on the map as the manufacturer of that sexy car.
Although Richard Hatfield goes on to win 2 more provincial elections, he never escapes the stigma of this failure. From now on, across Canada, every government-funded scheme that fails is scathingly dubbed another Bricklin.
The reason that the Bricklin did not succeed was not Richard's fault or the government of New Brunswick. It was the federal government that refused to get on board with the same support that they were giving to other companies, Ford and Chrysler and everything like that in Canada. Even though they were employing more than 1,000 people in St. John to build the thing, a lot of people who are in the know believe that the Bricklin could have succeeded.
His unique personality attracted extra attention during his life. In political circles, Hatfield was a mysterious wild card, but he kept his personal life quiet. Hatfield's Conservatives ruled the province until 1987. All of that changed quickly when Frank McKenna's Liberals swept the fall election, taking all 58 seats.
I think he had achieved just about everything that he had set out to do, and it was, he didn't want to resign and walk away from the party before the election or anything like that.
Hatfield was named senator in 1990, but served less than a year. Richard Hatfield died at the age of 60 on April 26, 1991, from brain cancer. He was always a proud New Brunswicker. Other than his political duties, Hatfield served as director of the Canadian Council of Christians and Jews. He was also an honorary member of the New Brunswick division of the Canadian Red Cross Society and the Provincial Council of the Boy Scouts of Canada. As New Brunswick Premier, he received the honorary title Chief Rolling Thunder from the Mi'kmaq Maliseet Nations. His unwavering promotion of his native province was ever present. For this, and for having unified the 2 distinct linguistic communities of New Brunswick, Richard Bennett Hatfield is one of the 12 New Brunswick greats.
Art Center College of Design held a summer celebration recognizing former students' accomplishments. In the transportation category, Herb Grasse won for his work with the Bricklin. It had been a long road to this point for the car, and no doubt a positive event for the car and Herb. In this series of photographs, it's not what I see that bothers me, it's what I don't see. Where is the other art student from the Bricklin project, Marshall Hobart? It was his design that Herb Grasse was instructed to base his work on. Why is it that he was overlooked? Hopefully my actions may inspire the college to correct a wrong, and I'll be there when Marshall gets the recognition he deserves.
Yeah, I hear all this stuff about fiasco and boondoggle, but there's got to be a flip side. I mean...
Well, let's see what the flip side is, Joe. Let's see. In 2 years, we did what nobody ever did in the car business, from creation to a car coming off the line. We did it in New Brunswick. The only failure was there wasn't enough time and there wasn't enough money to perfect the car, which, by the way, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, etc., take years to keep refining and refining until they get it right. And we had to get it right first time on the stage with no mistakes. That was the mistake.
As a company,
Si, sur le plan commercial, c'est un échec, sur le plan de l'ingénierie, c'est une réussite. Parce que 40 ans plus tard, c'est toujours une bonne voiture. C'est toujours une belle voiture. C'est assez incroyable.
that's pretty incredible.
C'est décevant parce que ça aurait été agréable d'avoir une voiture made in Canada qui aurait vraiment révolutionné le marché avec des caractéristiques de sécurité innovantes.
Much more difficult than I assumed, and I talked to a lot of people before I got the money necessary to get this engine going. But fortunately, there were a few people who said it was a success because you did build 3,000 cars.
Malgré la faillite de l'entreprise, Terry Tanner considère encore que le seul fait d'avoir produit des voitures relève de l'exploit.
We made them in spite of, not because of.
On a réussi à relever le défi malgré toutes les difficultés. On a créé un environnement de travail en un rien de temps, en 6 mois, et inventé une voiture.
So we spent $23 million.
On a donc dépensé 23 millions de dollars. Tout un exploit.
Fantastic.
On avait réussi quelque chose. On avait réussi à démontrer que les gens du Nouveau-Brunswick pouvaient produire une voiture et puis qu'on pouvait compétitionner dans le monde. Et puis, la fin de tout ça, bien comme Richard Hatfield l'a déjà partagé, si le grand frère canadien, le gouvernement du temps aurait investi avec nous, puis nous aurait supportés, on aurait toute une autre économie au Nouveau-Brunswick.
Je vais compter ça à mes petits-enfants. C'est quelque chose, là. Comme moi, mes enfants ne me croyaient pas, là. Ah, maman, t'as travaillé là-dessus, une femme. Une femme fait l'ouvrage d'homme.
Oui, très fier. Très fier. Je suis content que j'ai travaillé là aussi. Vraiment content que je travaillé là. Parce que comme ma soeur disait, le monde de la péninsule acadienne voyait une voiture de même passer. Hey, regardez ce qui passait une Bricklin.
J'ai travaillé là-dessus, je suis fière de le dire.
C'est ça, c'est vraiment une belle aventure pareil.
But the people in New Brunswick deserve a lot of credit, and it's a shame that they don't see what they did do. That car is driving on the street, and 30 years later, here it is, with people acclaiming everything we said it would do. It's doing. No scratches, no bumps, no Mars. It looks like a brand new car when it rides down the street. Who did it? The people in New Brunswick did it.
The idea that the Bricklin was somehow this colossal failure, that it was this awful piece of junk that wouldn't run properly, and that they were just these awful cars.
He and Campbell say that couldn't be further from the truth. They believe the innovative car was rushed to market and was ahead of its time.
Do you ever consider yourself a failure when you produce something this innovative in this province? And I think Canadians should look at this car with pride.
Shelley Steeves, Global News, Moncton.
The car failed.
La voiture est un échec?
No.
Non, c'est pas un échec. La compagnie a échoué. La voiture, elle, est une réussite totale.
The car is a total success.
Here you go. A New Brunswick business professor says it's time to revisit one of the biggest industrial failures of them all because interest in the Bricklin remains as strong as ever. CTV's Mike Cameron explains.
It's been more than 40 years since the last Bricklin rolled off the line here. Since then, the Bricklin has been the subject of books and song and theater, and some say there's enough of a story that it could attract tourists.
I think there's a great interest, and I think we're far enough away from the embarrassment of the story that we might be able to just look at it in a different light.
Lee Jolliffe is a business professor at UNBSJ. 4 decades after the debacle, Jolliffe says the Bricklin now needs to be seen as a resource for the region, a way to bring car enthusiasts to the Maritimes and entertain them while they're here.
For any of those car enthusiasts out there who are coming here on cruise ships and they're able to take a shore excursion or have a ride in a Bricklin or get their picture taken with a Bricklin. So it could add to our tourism product.
Oh, I don't see why not. It's a huge part of our history. It was here for years, and there's what's left.
Maybe Charlie was onto something.
The Bricklin's back. Dear Lord, the Bricklin's back.
Mike Cameron, CTV News, St. John.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. There is even now some controversy 40 years later. A lot of taxpayer dollars were lost with all of this, with the setting up of the plant. What do you say to New Brunswick taxpayers who even now, 40 years later, are a little annoyed at that?
Well, I don't blame them for being annoyed. You know, they lost money, but I lost a lot of money too, and unfortunately, I went bankrupt because of it. I lost a lot of my Subaru stock, which is, you know, before it was over, was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But the truth of the matter is, if they look around the world and see what's happening, like Tesla is building an electric car. They were given $500 million by the United States government. They're 2.5 years overdue. They're losing $25 million a month. And it shows that it just takes time to develop something, and what we didn't have was time, because we were a political football, because the premier used it to win an election, and because of that, the opposition used it to knock every time we missed a date. It was front page news.
Well, that's a very good point.
That project I had my heart and soul in. It was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I lost more money doing the SV-1 than everything I ever lost in my entire life, but got me more credit and made my life 10,000 times easier because of it. And if it didn't fail, I wouldn't have had all that. Don't ask me how come that happens that way, but I'm known for that car. I mean, Subaru, all that, it's interesting, but the car was what people remember. And they made a $20 silver coin. There's a Canadian Bricklin coin. There's a Canadian stamp. I got a notice from the post office department who does, and there's a Bricklin credit card. And they told me, you got a credit card, you have a stamp, and I thought they were going to tell me how much royalty I'm going to get. And then finished it with, and if you'll just give us your order, we're going to give you free shipping. That's my royalty from the post office of Canada.
So that car, you said, has done more for you?
It's done me more good. And the truth of the matter is, looking back, the best thing ever happened to me is I got put out of business in a way that I really had nothing to do with bad business. It was totally politics. He put me into politics, and politics screwed him and closed it down. But the truth of the matter is, if it was successful, let's see what I would have ended up with. I'm building that car. Now, no matter how beautiful a car is, no matter how many people like it, you got to change. It just gets old. It just gets boring. And when you build too many of it, it loses the mystique.
Malcolm was a figurehead, but he was the man who started the thing going. He hired Dick Vollmer. Dick Vollmer was the guy that made it work. He's the that hired the people. He hired Moy Adams. He hired Smokey Hanselman. He hired me. He hired Tom Munro. Malcolm hired Herb with Dick Alpany. Okay, those are key people who did wonderful things in terms of this car. Malcolm is an important kind of person, just like John was an important kind of person. These are not bad people, not at all. They are the reason that there is a United States of America with an industrial base that we have. Just like Henry Ford was important, Carnegie was important. People said he was yada, yada, yada. He also created the steel system. Rockefeller was an ass, but he created a bank system that worked. These people, Winton was important. Olds was important. Everybody that had the guts to step out of line and say, I will do it, are important. Malcolm had a dream. He was either gut strong enough or stupid enough to pursue it.
It's easy to mock Malcolm Bricklin or any of these other people who started a car company and failed, but the reality is that the auto industry is a really harsh business. So to all those armchair CEOs out there, I ask, how many cars have your last name on them?
Some dismiss Malcolm Bricklin as an automotive huckster who sold St. John a false dream on wheels. Others see him as a visionary, simply unlucky and ahead of his time. Perhaps I'm just one of the many stooges he's dazzled over the years with his big ideas and bigger personality, but the truth is, he wasn't any less authentic to me than all of those glad-handing PR people or hobnobbing automotive journalists I met that week at the New York Auto Show. So, I'll let you be the judge.
And the story of its rise and fall is being celebrated on a maritime stage. Well, tonight, we are delighted to welcome a very special guest to Live at 5, the man behind the legendary car, Malcolm Bricklin. Mr. Bricklin, I want to thank you so much for joining us from our studios in Fredericton tonight.
Oh, thank you, Bruce.
Have you been back to the Maritimes since you left in the 1970s?
The only time I actually visited was on 9/11. I was on an airplane coming from Birmingham, England, and it got diverted to Moncton, where I spent, unfortunately, in an unfortunate situation, 3 very lovely days in the hockey ring.
You really do have a long history here in the Maritimes.
Yes, and it was, you know, I look back here, I am 40 years later, and looking forward to seeing myself on stage, and it's really surreal.
Certainly. You mentioned the play. That is the reason that you're here tonight. A special guest at the Fredericton Playhouse this evening, opening night for the Bricklin, an automotive fantasy. What goes through your mind when you're going to be sitting down tonight in a theater seat watching a play about yourself?
Well, you know, I've been asked that question. I honestly can't tell you. I can only tell you when I'm sitting there what it'll go, because I can't imagine watching somebody who's supposed to be me mouthing words that I supposedly either said or thought and watching it while I'm still alive. So I really have no idea what I'm going to feel. But right now it sort of feels surreal.
Do you feel a little nervous about how you'll be portrayed?
No, right now it's not a nervous feeling. It's sort of a happy feeling, knowing that it's at least bringing some happiness to some people, and that maybe the Bricklin will make some money.
Maybe the Bricklin will finally make some money. That's right.
Yeah.
The entire company, we know, is thrilled that you're coming tonight. Have you met Jason Chesworth, the young actor who portrays you?
Not yet, not yet. I met the director, I met the writer, I met a few of the people, and they seem so enthusiastic, and I'm just really looking forward to it. I hear it's really fabulous.
It is. A lot of people are saying that. Were you consulted at all on the production? Did they call you and ask you about facts and that kind of thing?
No, they didn't. Therefore, I'm really happy, because whatever they did is their imagination.
It'll be a big surprise to everybody. All right, we want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, Mr. Bricklin, and enjoy the show.
Thank you very much. I'm sure I will.
Okay, Malcolm Bricklin, the man behind the legendary maritime-made sports car, and of course the subject of a fun musical that is now playing at the Fredericton Playhouse. Bricklin, an automotive fantasy, opens tonight, runs until the 7th of August. You can get tickets through the Playhouse at the box office there. Let's head back to Star.
A cowboy entrepreneur and a flamboyant premier dare to change the automotive industry forever.
Bring on that Bricklin. We want the Bricklin. I'm gonna give it a shot.
Big dreams collide with sports cars in the sexy, funk-infused musical. Audiences can't wait to take for a ride.
Who's the man with the vision? Who's the man with the guts? Who's the man who's gonna build it? No ifs, ands, or buts. Well, it's Malcolm Bricklin. That's what I said. We had a dream. We want the Bricklin. Bring on that Bricklin. We want the Bricklin.
Got a vehicle with 5 major innovations. Urethane bumpers and the first acrylic chassis. No chrome push button gold wing doors. They're gonna be lining up from Tinseltown to Tallahassee.
But I'm gonna play him as a rock star. So there's equal parts Malcolm Bricklin and also some Mick Jagger and David Bowie in there. You did a great job. I really recorded it. Yeah. Going well. Thanks. Going well.
You wanna cruise, wanna blow the blues, you wanna feel like a rock star. Baby, you're so fine. Hold on to your horsepower, baby. We're gonna have a little fun. Gonna rotate your lug nuts. Oh, one by one. Gonna check your brake line fluid. Vacuum up your floors. Gonna push your buttons, baby. And open up your doors. Your going doors. 1, 2, 3.
what it was like to see yourself
it
up there?
was fabulous. It could not have been better. I thought it was me up there in the premiere. And they caught the essence of really what happened. I mean, I laughed. I said exactly, not quite exactly, but pretty darn close. And the quality of the acting and the writing was first class. Broadway would deserve this.
It was 20 years ahead of its time. So when you look at it, I mean, it's still a great looking car.
He's talking about a Bricklin car.
All American parts, or every part is from America, but it's a Canadian car.
Bob is more than an enthusiast. A few years back, Bob purchased all the outstanding inventory from Bricklin's liquidator. So, if you need replacement parts for a Bricklin, you need Bob.
The new parts that we make now are a fiberglass gel coat covering versus the acrylic plastic.
Going to fiberglass is a big plus. The original acrylic may have been futuristic in '74, but it flopped under extreme conditions. To successfully rebuild, you need glass, not a blast from the past. The guys at Syndicate could have a tough job finding parts for the defunct Bricklin. But thankfully, back in '72, Bricklin entered the automotive world not just as a competitor, they were going to be big-time buyers too. With Ford supplying engines and transmissions, and AMC giving everything from Matador radiators to Javelin suspensions. So parts are still out there, you just have to track down the DNA.
The first car was built in 1974. It's no longer in production. 2 years after hitting the streets, the company went bankrupt. Fans now have to surf the web and cruise into car shows to get up close and personal or buy one of their own.
The first meet was held at Hershey 40 years ago.
And 40 years later, the Bricklin meets in Hershey are still going strong, with car lovers traveling from Connecticut, New York, and even Florida.
I do best in the Bricklin meets because they're all the same type of car. I mean, it's such a unique car at a regular car show. They don't know what class to put it in, so that can be a little difficult.
It's fun to drive, a head turner. I don't have to have a Bentley. I have a Bricklin.
Paris Thomas, ABC 27 News.
Finally, before I let you go, I have to ask you, what are you doing these days? We know you're not retired, really.
Well, retiring is never going to happen. I can guarantee you that. I'm doing a lot of projects. I have to talk about the Yugo, because that was in the 1980s. I had sent my team around the world with the following instructions. Find me the cheapest car in the universe. And they came back with, we found one. Where? Yugoslavia. Really? Yeah. Where's Yugoslavia? They told me where Yugoslavia is. I said, but that's a communist country. Oh, yeah, but it really isn't. I said, what does he mean? It really is or really isn't? Well, it sort of is, but it isn't. I said, okay, I'll go to Yugoslavia. Very, very uncomfortably. Now, I fly to Zurich, and I have to change planes to go to Belgrade. I am in the VIP lounge in the bathroom. While I'm going to the bathroom, peeing next to me is Henry Kissinger. Now, I had read everything about Yugoslavia, and I read that Larry Eagleberger was an ambassador to Yugoslavia, and there was some kind of big problem, a hurricane or earthquake or something. He donated blood and became Yugoslavia's most favored son. So I say to Henry, while we're peeing, Henry, is Larry Eagleberger working for you? He said, yes, he's my president. No kidding. I said, I think I'm about to do a deal with Yugoslavia. I think we should get together. While we're peeing, he takes a card and hands it over the what's name. All right, that's my introduction to Henry Kissinger.
Oh, there you go.
Now, I go to Yugoslavia, I meet the people, and they're just the nicest people in the whole world. And the factory is about the worst factory I've ever seen in my life. It had grease this high on the floor. People smoked while they burn holes in the what's name. They welded without goggles because it was macho, and they had burned their eyes out. And you could not get near a bathroom for 300 feet. I decide this is crazy. But they take us for lunch into a park that has 5,000 acres. and it's important 5,000. And in the center of the park, they have monuments all over the place sculptured, but in the center is a little hotel and a little restaurant. And we go there, and they tell me the story about the park. Yugoslavia fought the Nazis in the war.
Yeah.
And the Nazis had taken over this town of Kragujevac, which is where the factory is. And a bunch of kids and fathers got together and became vigilantes, whatever, and they were killing Nazis. So the Nazis, in order to show them you don't do that crap, got 5,000 fathers and sons and killed them in that park. So they did an acre for each kid, the 5,000 acres. And I listened to the story, and my tears are coming out of my eyes. I said to them, I'll tell you what, if you'll listen to everything I tell you to do, don't tell me you can do it, just listen, and we'll send over to people. You do what I say, I'll take that, and I'll do something for you. You pick a state in the United States that you want to beat Volkswagen, and our car will sell more than Volkswagen in that state, I promise you. Everybody laughed. We signed a contract. Unbelievable. It was $39.90. Now, I had my oldest son and Tony Simonera, a guy that knows cars backwards and forwards, and he knew Fiat backwards and forwards, and it was in a 30-year-old Fiat in a 50-year-old factory that was there. And I said to them, their mandate, you got to meet the regulations, that's number one, and you got to put in everything you think you have to put in for the United States. Seatbelts, all sorts of things you have to put in. Yeah, but it'll cost money. I said, don't worry about it, just do it. And we negotiated a price, which was the original price without anything new in it. And $39.90, I couldn't really afford to put too much else in there because I had to pay the dealer's money and we had to make money, and you had warranty and you had advertising. I mean, you don't just sell a car. Anyhow, I would get a call once a week from my son. Dad, we just put in the seatbelts and they cost whatever, let's say $52. You understand that's money, that's a currency American that they don't have, that they have to buy from somebody outside the country. I said, do it. Every week they'd call me up with a bill of, Dad, we're going to have to put in much time. Do it. So now it's 1 month before we're ready to put them on the ship. Now, we had to pave the port. We had to bring in unleaded gas. They didn't have any of that stuff. We had to take the rust off the railroads that were taken in there so it didn't drip and ruin the cars. And we had to build a little factory outside the factory because 100% of the cars came off the line not good. So we had to fix them. And those that we rejected, they got more money for. So they didn't give a damn. So we're doing all this. Everything is ready to go. Had to get a ship that was going to be coming back and forth to Yugoslavia. Set up 400 dealers for that thing. They had pre-orders of over 100,000 units before I brought the first car in. We bring in the parts. We do everything we're supposed to do. And now it's 1 month before everything is ready to go. And ambassadors are coming in and politicians are coming in. Everything's going to be a big deal. So now I had to send my two people over to negotiate the final price, open up the letters of credit, and get going. Everything's ready. And I said to them before they left, here's your negotiation. First, you admit we put in $1,200 of improvements into the car. Absolutely don't even argue with that. Here's the bill of lading. Show them $1,200. And then tell them we're not going to give them anything. They have to take the original price without the $1,200 in it. They said, what can we go up to? I said, you can't go up to anything. That's it. If we're going to sell it for $39.90, which we've done, we can't give them a penny. And it leaves us, after everything, a $500 profit. They said, well, why are you sending us? I said, just go. So after the first day, I get a call back. You know, everybody's laughing, ha, ha, ha. When are we going to get down to business? I said, don't change your attitude at all. The third day, I get a call, and they said, you know what we're doing now? We meet at 10 o'clock, we drink Solivovich, or whatever that's called.
Yeah.
He said, by 12 o'clock, everybody's drunk. But there's no negotiation. There's nothing to negotiate. You've just told them, that's it. I said, no problem. I said, I'll be in 2 days. And I called our ambassador in the that was there for the United States, and I called their ambassador in, and I have a big meeting with their people, their top people at Zastava. And we sit down. I said, gentlemen, First of all, I want to thank everybody for the great cooperation. Look what you got outside. Hey, we had PPG come over and teach them how to paint metallic paints. I mean, we really did a number on this thing. And he said, I said, now here's our story. At $39.90, you got a Yugo mania. You'll sell as many cars as you can build, as long as you let us build what we're talking about and you pay attention to doing it right. But we can't give you any money for that. And here's the reason. We're capitalists. We have to make money. You're a communist. You don't have to make any money. And that's it. And they said, okay.
And there you go.
And that's how Yugo started. And we delivered 60,000 the first year at a $500 profit per. And it went along, and it went along. And then somebody came to me and, there's another part to the story, and then that's the end of the Yugo story. So now Eagle Burger's on my board of directors, and Kissinger is working for us. All right. One day I get a call from Larry Eagleburger, Malcolm. We got to go over to Yugoslavia and meet Milosevic. He's the new president of Yugoslavia. I said, okay, fine. I was over there once a month anyhow. So we fly over. And we meet Milosevic and his wife in a beautiful ornate room, and everybody was kissing our ass because we were the only business that was happening in Yugoslavia. And I walk out of the room after an hour and a half, and I turned to Eagleburger and I said, I'm selling the company. He said, what's wrong with you? I said, Larry, in my lifetime, I have never been in a room that I felt such evil. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but even when I talk today, my hair snowed on my end. There was just something about the Milosevic and his wife that it was like sitting in my face. And 1 month later, I sold it for $20 million. 2 years after that, the United Nations put an embargo on Yugoslavia, so you could not buy or sell anything from Yugoslavia. And of course, that was the end of Yugo in the United States.
This is Nightline, January 8th, 2007.
Good evening from Detroit. We're here in Motown at the North American International Auto Show. In the audience was Malcolm Bricklin, an American entrepreneur with his eye on the East. Bricklin made some $150 million from introducing the Subaru to North America. Over the last 3 years, he's been figuring out how to import the next low-cost sensation into America. More than 1,000 hours of that quest have been caught on tape by his son Jonathan for a yet-to-be-released documentary, The Entrepreneur.
Like Preston Tucker before him and John DeLorean after, the Malcolm Bricklin Car Company soon went bankrupt. He then proceeded to lose everything he had ever made and get divorced for the first time. So without wasting another minute, he reset his sights on importing cars rather than building them.
Get set, and Yugo!
In 1983, he made a deal to import the cheapest new car ever from Yugoslavia, the Yugo. Lots of jokes were made about the Yugo, but Malcolm was laughing all the way to the bank. My dad made $500,000 a month for 24 straight months until he sold the company for $20 million. But then, true to character, Malcolm proceeded to invest every single cent he had into starting an electric bicycle company and then an experimental fuel cell company. Both quickly went out of business, leaving him broke. Again. I once heard my dad referred to as the P.T. Barnum of the automobile world, and I thought that was a pretty respectable comparison.
If I hear anybody talking to anybody in the universe different than what I'm about to say, at that moment, I can't have them in my universe. So I'm trying to make this really strong. Here's the deal. We're going after signing dealers. That's number one. We're going to sign dealers as if Thanksgiving and then December 31st is our cutoff date. And we have no more hope after that. We're going down this road. We have to play ballsy. I don't want anybody showing weakness, which makes me look weak. I can't have that. I have no problem believing that this is going to happen exactly the way it's supposed to happen. Please don't let anybody fuck with my dream.
What if I told you that American-made vehicles are so yesterday?
It will not be long before some of the cars on the road in this country bear a new label, made in China.
What we want to do is sell cars that are fabulous cars inexpensively from China so that we are on the higher end rather than the lower end. Why don't we go after selling cars competing with BMWs and Mercedes and Jaguars and Audis, if we could? If we could build a car that had their soul, that had a better interior and had a bigger engine and looked really cool and was designed by Pininfarina Bertoni, and I could sell it for half price, I think there's a big market for that.
First, Bricklin went to Europe, where he had discussions with an ailing Polish car company.
So when you open the door, it looks expensive. When you look at it, it looks expensive. And when it drives nice. Now, when we go to hybrid, then we can go and give good performance.
Then he went to Tata Motors in India.
If we come up with a product that we want for the United States, and we come to you and say, would you engineer it? And then we bring it back, prototypes, and we get orders, then you can use that product to sell in Asia, to sell in Europe, to do anything you want, because all I know is North America.
Eventually, he landed in China.
Look at the inside of this car, guys. I'll take $3 million of it.
Chery, one of China's largest independent car makers, had caught Malcolm's eye. He wanted a deal with the company. One of his first challenges was to cross the cultural divide, which he did in his own unique style.
The word I hear when I talk about doing business in China is relationship. Relationship is the most important thing that we have to do if we're going to get together in a partnership in the most important car area in the world, the United States. We can take a long time and know a little bit about each other each time, or we can get naked. And we can show you just exactly who we are and show you in a way that you know exactly everything about us, so you know who we are and what we're going to do.
Despite this remarkable show, the two sides decide a deal is worth pursuing. But negotiations between the American maverick and his Chinese counterparts always seem to end up one step forward, another step sideways.
But unless we have a piece of paper signed that says we're going to get started, we have no interest in spending our time and our money giving you information about the United States market. It's time for you to decide, be my partner or not be my partner. And if you can't decide that, I can understand that. It's a tough decision. But to not be my partner could be the worst decision you can make. Performance bond? I'm going to put up $225 million, give them letters of credit for 50,000 units, and I'm going to give them a performance bond? You know what? That's insulting.
At one point, Bricklin got so frustrated on the lack of progress, he staged a walkout.
So it's obvious to me they don't want to really sign a contract that they're wasting our time. All of these back to where we were when that man was negotiating with me 5 months ago. This is and we're putting up $225 million. What are they crazy? I'm going to the bathroom and I'm ready to leave. I want out of here.
In addition to the difficult negotiations, Bricklin was having a tough time raising capital for his part of the deal. Traditional American dealers were unwilling to stake a long shot, but finally, Bricklin persuaded 50 to put up the funds.
Due to declining sales by Detroit's big three automakers, car dealers were eager to explore other opportunities. Malcolm's plan was right on schedule.
There you go.
After months and months of negotiations, the two sides were unable to close a deal. One of the established car makers, Chevrolet, now has the inside track on bringing Chery cars to America. But Bricklin remains enthusiastic about another deal with another Chinese firm.
This is now what? This is the future?
This is an electric hybrid plug-in. This is the next generation that is going to change, I believe, the way cars are built and the way energy is used.
As for Malcolm Bricklin, if some Chinese deal doesn't work out, well, there are countless other options out there for this maverick of the motor industry.
You did shit that people said you couldn't do. Why is this not going to work?
Every other car company in the world would want it not to work, for starters. But everybody knows you can't stop it. I'm talking about quality, not that it's going to fall in the middle. I want to be in the top 1, 2, or 3, or I'm going to kill somebody.
Now he's once again going to put his own name on a vehicle with plans for a radically styled electric three-wheeler.
From its sleek body to its gull-wing doors, the Bricklin car is still finding new enthusiasts over 45 years after its making.
We drove to Tennessee and bought the thing a day after I saw my first Bricklin. And of course then, you never imagined that a 1975, mine is a 75, car would have such a following.
Malcolm says founding the Bricklin car still motivates him to this very day.
It's like seeing your kids. I see them on the road and I smile. And I see them here, and more important than the car, I see what it does with the people who own the car. And they're all nice people, the kind of people I want to be around. It's an interesting world. I'm going to keep on doing it until I die, and it's going to keep me young until I die.
Reporting in Bowling Green, Brandon Jarrett, WBKO News.
Junkman.
Grips, get ready. I want to dive on this Jaguar. Lights on the hood. We're going to run down the riverbed. Hoy, we're going to have a little action here, baby.
From the maker of Gone in 60 Seconds, the chase thriller of the 70s, comes the chase thriller of the 80s, The Junkman. From junk cars to movie stars, Harlan Hollis is the American dream, worth millions, and now someone wants it all.
Yeah, the junk man lives with his life on the line. They're trying to kill him and he's running out of time. He loves his cars and he loves his child. He's a millionaire and born too wild.
Michael, why do they call him the junk man? Before he decided to get into the movie-making business, he was in the auto junk business, and now he collects stuff.
Fans from around the world gather here to pay tribute to a great American legend, the brilliant star of East of Eden, Giant, and the classic Rebel Without a Cause.
Harlan B. Hollis will hereafter be referred to only as the target.
Deadly assassins with their aircraft and speeding cars close in for the kill. He did his own stunts in his movies, but this time he's driving for his life. The Junkman brings you intense high-speed action. Witness the destruction of over 150 vehicles in some of the most daring airplane, car, and blimp stunts ever filmed.
Yeah, the junk man drives like a bat out of hell. His dreams come true like a ring in a bell. The bombs and the bullets are coming his way, and his money won't help him get away today. The women and the young girls drive on the night.
It's time to put the fun back in the theater with entertainment for the entire family. The Junkman, 2 years in the making. The chase thriller of the 80s. Rated PG.
Junkman.
17th Street.
Jane Dean said before he died, there's 2 more roads that I'd like to ride. Give me the wheel and I'll give me the gun from Highway 1. Just pass across the street. Alone and the young girls died on the night that Jane Dean died. Yeah, Jane Dean knew he was flying too low. He was bound for glory and he had to go. He loved bright lights and good fast cars, the women in love and the Hollywood stars. The women in love and the young girls died on the night that Jane Dean died. Yeah, the junk man lives with his life on the line. They're trying to kill him and he's running out of time. He loves his cars and he loves his child. He's a millionaire and born too wild. Women love and the young girls died on the night that Jane Dean died. Jane Dean said, I'm a son of a gun. There are 2 more roads that I'd like to run. Someone says, what could they be? The road that's true and the one that's free. The women love and the young girls died on the night that Jane Dean died. Yeah, the junk man drives like a bat out of hell. His dreams come true like a ring in a bell. Oh, the bombs and the bullets are coming his way, and his money won't get to get away today. Women love and the young girls died on the night that Jane Dean died. This is Gibbs. You guys back off and give that jobber some room. We don't want to get Jane Dean knew he was flying too low. He was bound for glory, and he had to go. He loved bright lights and good fast cars, and women in love and the Hollywood stars. The women love and the young girls died on the night that Jane Dean died. Ooh.
jungle out there. The stifling tropical heat makes it hard to breathe.
Heat wave continues today with...
The air is as thick as the dense undergrowth that surrounds you, blocking your path. Every day you fight your way through this dense, treacherous jungle as both the hunter and the hunted. But today is different. Today, you are entering into the laundry jungle to sell some of your most important brands. Today, you're on the trail of something. It's more than you'll be selling the next chapter of the HDL revolution that began with survive in this jungle by being good.
I get some weird requests here at Gas Monkey Garage, and some of them are even about cars. But if I can turn them into cash, I'm in on it, no problem. It's just like this. I keep a list of guys with want certain cars, and a guy in Canada wants a Bricklin. And then I get a call from a couple of guys who are selling a Bricklin. Cha-ching, making money. You guys must be the ones that called me on a Bricklin, since you have a Bricklin.
I'm Kevin Gordon.
My name's Mike Jernigan, and we're business partners. We flip houses as a hobby.
So what's the dealio with this car?
We purchased a house, and when we were going through it, we found it in the garage.
We ended up coming across a 1975 Bricklin SV-1. Kind of a rare car, so we trailered that thing down from Columbus, Ohio, and we're getting ready to see what we can get for it.
Bricklin is basically like a DeLorean, but it was a car that was made in Canada. It's based on Canadian parts combined with Ford parts, which is a 351 Cleveland, automatic transmission, 9-inch rear end. Pretty decent little car, got gull wing doors, and just kind of had that futuristic space look back in the mid-'70s.
They're only produced for 3 years. There's only roughly like 2,800 of them. We've got one of them now.
It's not horrible shape, but not really gonna know anything until you put some power to it and find out what's going on, are we? Bottom line is, they wanted $5 grand for it. They got no keys, doors won't open, don't know if the motor's good, don't know if anything's good on it whatsoever. Does it have a flux capacitor?
No, we looked.
Oh, that's a DeLorean. But they already drove all the way out here with it, so see if I can't get it bought for a cheap price and maybe make $1 or $2. I can't do $5 grand. I'm at like $2 grand. I mean, I gotta get keys, I gotta get into it.
Yeah, it's $1 grand to get it down here.
Could you do 4?
No.
Not having the key, I think, was one of the bigger issues. He has no clue if it's actually gonna start and run, so I can see where he was coming from on that.
I don't know what I have until I get a battery on it, guys, so, I mean, I'll do $3 grand, that's the best I can do, and then I'll just take my chances. I mean, odds are the motor's locked up and everything else.
Oh, we could do that.
That's better what we've been offered before with it not running.
We'll do it.
You know, we settled on $3,000, so we're pretty happy with that.
What we have here is exactly what its namesake is. It's a brick on a trailer. It doesn't run, doesn't drive. And if I can't get it to run and drive, it's just gonna be a gas monkey brick. All right, cool. I did promise to sweeten the deal just a little bit. I mean, these guys did haul this POS all the way down from Ohio. So here goes.
Say hi, Mom. Just say hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Things I gotta do to make a buck. Get out of here, your 15 seconds are up. Hey, Aaron, you know what a Bricklin is?
This is Chop, Cut, Rebuild, where automotive dreams become hot rod reality. Classic designs and surprising finds. Hosted by Dan Woods. Real cars, real techs, real deadlines. This is Chop, Cut, Rebuild.
Finally time to see if Canada gets props for more than hockey and great beer.
Today we're revealing the car at the Consul General's residence. It's a Canada Day reception. So there's gonna be lots of Canadians here, and since the car was born in Canada, what a better place to show it.
heard Grasse was the original designer of the Bricklin, and I'm hoping that he's going to be pleased with what we did with the car.
Revealing a car on the lawn at a garden party filled with dignitaries and political types isn't our usual MO. But given the history, it should pull in some interesting reactions when this gull-winged achievement struts its stuff. A reception at the Consul General of Canada's residence can bring out some high-profile invitees. Celebrities jockey for an invite to rub elbows at this kind of LA party all the time. A team of car guys isn't the normal group of RSVPs. It should be a unique diversion. It wowed the originators of the car from the moment they laid eyes on it.
Well, when I first saw this Bricklin, I went, wow. Wow, this is a car for the 21st century. Well, about 100 of them.
The great entrepreneur. You're a great entrepreneur. I'll say that you're a fabulous entrepreneur.
The paint job is about as nice as I've seen. The color I love. Really, really do love the car. I wish they had made that in acrylic. We'd have sold the hell out of them.
Cliff and his partner are quick to corner the original designer to see if they're in trouble.
So what do you think, sir? This is, I mean, it was his idea, but it was your design. So what do you think?
It was his sperm. I think you guys succeeded. You guys pulled it off. You've managed to maintain the design integrity. I was amazed on a couple of things. One, the impact of the vehicle. First, visually, fantastic. I mean, I got thinking, what would I do if I had to do it myself? And you guys came pretty damn close. And that's, you know, the honest truth on the thing. The color, spectacular. I think you guys actually improved it.
Well, the bumper was actually made 3 days ago.
I saw the bumpers, and the bumpers did it for me. Because you really did. That was a very major thing. By taking the bumper, and not, if you didn't touch another thing, you put it in the 21st century, immediately.
The car needs an impact color. You got the impact color. It's fantastic. Then I looked at the maple leaf. It's a nice second read, and it does say Canada. You know, it's the Canadian national symbol, and this is a hot car, so I think a burning maple leaf is fantastic.
The last thing I thought I'd see is a fantastic sports car. My first instinct, it was brand new as opposed to being rebuilt, so you guys did a hell of a job.
The celebs were impressed too.
We found this car behind gull wing door number 1. The only trouble is that I wonder how I can get into this thing. How do I get out of it?
I remember the Bricklin. I remember the whole controversy, but that it was sort of like way ahead of its time, but built in Canada. So I didn't even realize you could still find a Bricklin. So this is quite remarkable. The thing about this car is that you're not going to drive along the street and find somebody else with one just like it.
In the heart of Detroit's 8 Mile lies the city's biggest and baddest pawn shop.
Nobody messes with us here.
Get off! This is where customers find fast cash.
Sold.
And sometimes lose their minds.
Call the cops!
You won't believe
Oh my God!
what's in store.
My kid could have got killed!
You can go back to the future.
Yeah, people get confused with the DeLorean.
What is it?
We got a 1976 Bricklin. There was only 17 76s ever titled. What you got here is the SV-1, very aerodynamic. It's fiberglass, but it's bonded acrylic. The best part about this beauty, 29,000 miles.
How long have you had it?
I've had this car for 3 years. I restored it, but I can't afford to hold on to this beauty because I am laid off. Want to hear this bad boy?
Go ahead, start up real quick. This is one of the coolest cars I've ever seen. It's got gull wing doors. In other words, it opens up like a bird's wings. There were so few of these made. I only hope we can make a deal because I want to own it. What would you really take?
I'd take 30,000.
All right, let me go look. Give me a minute. There's no doubt that that car does have some worth. Oh, here you go. I think the guy's out of his mind. But not the kind of money that he was asking for. So, it's cool, but I found one for a lot less. It's gonna be under 10 grand.
Oh, really? I'll have to pass.
You want to pawn it?
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
If you want to pawn it, I can give you 7,000.
Would you do 8?
I'll be 7th out.
Let's do it.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, I'll meet you inside.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
thanks. This is one of those things I would have loved to have bought, but we're a pawn shop. So as long as I can loan you money on it, I'm happy. All right, here you go. Thank you, young man. And if 90 days from today, he loses it, I'm driving it, and I'm keeping it.
And a 1974 Bricklin SV-1. In fact, not just an SV-1, it's serial number 1 SV-1, originally owned by the Bricklin namesake, Malcolm Bricklin.
360 cubic inches of V8 power, and guess who supplied the power plant? 360, of course, built by a couple of different manufacturers, most notably Mopar, but nope, it's not. AMC. AMC supplied the power. This was one of the many sports car experiments that have been done, really since the dawn of automotive time. And the fact that this is the very first one, serial number literally 00001, makes this one a bit special.
Yeah. Who knew it still existed?
Right.
Okay, show of hands here. Who had the Bricklin Matchbox?
I did not.
I had that one. You guys didn't? No, 1 out of 4. That surprises me.
You're one of one, Stephen.
The Bricklins had a clever feature called the bathomatic doors.
Yes.
If you opened them up when it was raining, you took a bath. The water would channel right down onto the driver.
And Bricklin history in the making, sells at $43,000.
There you go. All right. Good look at that SV-1 here in Schaumburg. Break coming up for us. More muscle from Chicago coming up.
You know you love me.
I do what I want.
I'd rather be dreaming.
Deal with it.
Deal with it.
Deal with it.
It's my Luma, baby. Deal with it.
My name is SZA. Everything I love, I overdo. Deal with it.
My name is Lil Nas X. I don't know what the hell is going on. Deal with it.
Hunter. My name is Hunter.
Who does this kid think he is?
What is sexy to me? Confidence is sexy to me.
I'm so weird. I don't know. I'm so fucking weird.
Are we gonna do this thing or what?
What I like. I love who I love. I do what I want. Deal with it.
Two kids in an old car stolen from a dive bar. Oh, we don't know. Street lines faded, but we're alright. Oh, we don't know, but you know, we've been running on 44 miles in the field of gold, and I've been hanging on, thinking that we get away. Oh, we've been running on 44 miles in the field of gold, and I've been hanging on, 'cause we've been running on strange open land, didn't know where we'd end up. My heart let out the things I said, but the level over, you're lost and under. Two kids in a small town trying not to burn out.
and I've been hanging on. 'Cause we've been running on strange open land, didn't know where we'd end up. And yet my heart let out the things I said, but now I'm over, get lost and younger. Down, tell me I am broken, let's end this now. Say what's not been spoken, 'cause we know we are, we know we're lost, we know we are. 'Cause we've been running on strange open land, didn't know where we'd end up. And yet my heart let out the things I said, but now I'm over, get lost in your
Les yeux rivés devant, fuck ceux qui n'y croient pas. Le passé brûle derrière, les flammes crépitent encore. On continue de bosser dur parce que rien n'est acquis. Défoncé dans la poisse, c'est à gagnant que je naquis. Je pense à mon passé, à tous mes frères qui fléchissent. Et je me dis pour mon futur, dans le présent faut que j'assure. La rue fait pas de cadeau, des mauvais coups et la scène. Paris fait pas de cadeau, mauvaise tâche on m'assigne. Gros on a touché à tout, à force on a les mains sales. Un tas de papier, je vais au lit au soleil. Refrais quand je vais témoin, mon yeux blanc ils vont salir. Dis à toute ton équipe, l'addition sera salée. Dis à toute ton équipe, l'addition sera salée. On a niqué santé pour un putain de salaire. Guette la concrétisation, maintenant l'état spécial. Digo, je rallume un terre, je pense à mon passé. À tous mes rêves de gosses, animés de passion. Défoncé sous le tout, je sais pas ce qui s'est passé. Jeunesse abîmée, recouvert de mensonges. Digo, je rallume un terre, je pense à mon passé. À tous mes rêves de gosses, animés de passion. Défoncé sous gricou, je sais pas ce qui s'est passé. Jeunesse abîmée, recouvert de mensonges. Tellement d'émotions pour toutes ces années passées. Un tas de cicatrices, un recouvert de mensonges. Maman m'a dit à t'es trop chaud, mais c'est qui ton mécène. On se débrouille tous ces lycéens, fait passer le message. La donne change maintenant, tu peux gros s'attirer qu'à là. Mettons pour me sortir, gros j'ai de la crosse au calé. Chez moi ça pue la demeure, mais personne compatit. Je me réfugie au sud pour montrer mes compétences. J'attendais à t'es trop chaud, t'inquiète gros, tu vas tout niquer. Chez nous c'est mon unique, la célébrité. Défoncé sous camage, là je repense au passé. Je me dis la zermie, Igo y'en a assez. Igo y'en a assez. Igo y'en a assez. Igo y'en a assez, je me dis la zermie, Igo y'en a assez. J'allume un terre, je pense à mon passé. À tous mes rêves de gosses, animés de passion. Défoncé sous gricou, je sais pas ce qui s'est passé. Jeunesse abîmée, recouvert de mensonges. Igo, je rallume un terre, je pense à mon passé. À tous mes rêves de gosses, animés de passion. Défoncé sous gricou, je sais pas ce qui s'est passé. Jeunesse abîmée, recouvert de mensonges. Igo, je rallume un terre, je pense à mon passé. Igo, y'en a assez. Igo, y'en a assez. Je me dis la zermie, Igo, y'en a assez. Igo, je rallume un terre, je pense à mon passé. À tous mes rêves de gosses, animés de passion. Défoncé sous gricou, je sais pas ce qui s'est passé. Jeunesse abîmée, recouvert de mensonges. Igo, je rallume un terre, je pense à mon passé. À tous mes rêves de gosses, animés de passion. Défoncé sous gricou, je sais pas ce qui s'est passé. Jeunesse abîmée.
like a road trip you remember for the rest of your life.
It's been a hell of a ride. There've been ups and downs, skids, turns, trouble and strife.
But looking back on it all, from the start to the end, I know for sure when we look deep inside,
when we add it all up, we're gonna say to ourselves, we've been on a hell of a ride.
It's been a hell of a ride, like a girlfriend who broke your heart, but you'll never forget.
it's been a hell of a ride, spinning round and round like a game of Russian roulette.
With every bubble that burst and every dollar we lost, I swear another little piece of me died. And yet I have to admit, though it blew up in our face, we've been on a hell of a ride.
Like the freedom you feel when you get behind that wheel and you look to the sky and there's not even a hint of weather.
Like a warm summer day when the wind blows you away and it seems like the road before you stretches out forever.
It's been a hell of a ride, like a road trip you remember for the rest of your life. It's been a hell of a ride, there've been ups and downs, skids, turns, trouble and strife. But looking back on it all, from the start to the end, I know for sure when we look deep inside, when we add it all up, we're gonna say to ourselves, from the start to the end, it's been a hell of a ride.
The car is a total success.